Chapter 1132. Buzz. In the sky above the divinity battlefield, the shadow of a blue phoenix flew across the sky, heading towards the central divine mountain. The two black demon guards frowned. Just as they were about to fly into the sky, they were stopped by a low voice. "Don't stop her." The two of them were stunned. They turned around and bowed to Ling Yuanxing, who was standing in front of the ancestral hall. "Ancestor." Ling Yuanxing nodded slightly. He looked up at the demon shadow that covered the sky. His eyes were deep, but there was a subtle smile on his face. The great Empress Immortal Phoenix, Gu Chaoxiai. Naturally, he had heard of this great Empress. She was one of the 10 sequences of Qing Song. She was born with the will of the Phoenix and had comprehended the most mysterious law of chaos in the world. As long as such a monster didn't die, she would definitely reach the top of the world in the future and create a new era. Ling Yuanxing didn't know how the great Empress got involved with him. However, it was obvious that with this woman following him, Ling Zhao's future would be more brilliant. However, it was said that this great Empress was cold, domineering, and decisive. Thinking of the women gathered on the divine mountain, Ling Yuanxing broke out in cold sweat for Ling Zhao. Boom! When the shadow of the blue phoenix stopped in the sky, Gu Chaoxiai stepped down from the sky. Her phoenix robe was bright and loose, with countless golden patterns embroidered on it. Her hair was casually draped over her shoulders, covering half of her face. She was noble and peerless. Under her feet, there were layers of strange phenomena. The galaxy, the divine mountain, and the phoenix dragon bowed its head. Instantly, on the divine mountain, several pairs of eyes looked over, mixed with coldness and shock. Especially Jin Han, whose eyes were filled with jealousy and hatred. In terms of status, she was almost the same as Gu Chaoxiai. Moreover, if it weren't for Ling Zhao, the immortal Phoenix ancient dynasty would have fallen long ago. In terms of talent, Gu Chaoxiai was indeed unparalleled. However, where did Jin Han fall short? But now, this great Empress Immortal Phoenix was not only the wife of the Ling people's young master, but also the only flaw that could make the young master let go of everything and become an enemy of the world. And she was just a servant. How could she be worthy of the young master's attention? Why? Buzz. Gu Chaoxiai's figure landed on the ground. Celestial radiance blossomed under her jade-like feet, spotless by even a speck of dust. In his hand was a white jade cauldron. Spiritual light flowed around the cauldron, and there was a faint heat emanating from it. "Where's Ling Zhao?" Gu Chaoxiai frowned as he glanced at the 3 beautiful figures walking over from different directions. His expression became increasingly calm and indifferent. "Young master is in seclusion in the palace. He said that no one is to disturb him." Jin Han said calmly. But the moment she finished speaking, Gu Chaoxi pushed open the door of the ancient palace and walked in. "You!" Jin Han's pretty face froze as she recalled the scene when she first met Ling Zhao. In the end, she didn't dare to stop him and glared hatefully at the beautiful figure in the phoenix robe. "Amitabha, this must be Master Ling Zhao's fiancée, Empress Gu Chaoxiai." Although Yao Wang's eyes were clear, they couldn't hide the dimness in them. She didn't know why, but seeing Gu Chaoxiai so unscrupulous, she was inexplicably envious. She only dared to be so casual because she was favored. In the entire Azure continent, perhaps only this empress had the right to be so unscrupulous in front of Ling Zhao. Wasn't love supposed to be like this? As they were both in the sequence, Yao Wang didn't have any scruples about Gu Chaoxiai. However, in the end, cultivation and talent couldn't decide everything. In the realm, Ling Zhao sat cross-legged in the void. Around him, there seemed to be countless sword intents that evolved. There were bursts of multicolored light and auspicious signs all over the sky. At this moment, although his cultivation level didn't increase at all, inexplicably, his aura seemed to have become more piercingly cold and vigorous. The Saint Realm was an important realm on the path to immortality. Above the Saint Realm, one had to transcend mortality. Therefore, this realm was also known as the heaven-defying realm. The higher one's cultivation level, the more the heavenly Tao didn't tolerate the shackles of the heavenly Tao. Therefore, the lightning tribulation of this realm was a taboo for cultivators. It was a great tribulation of life and death. Even if someone touched the threshold of the saint realm, less than 1 in 10 could safely survive this tribulation. Because of this, the lightning tribulation was filled with the Tao of heaven and earth. It contained the most original power of heaven and earth. Bathing in it, one's mortal aura would be cleansed, and one's blood spirit would be transformed into a true saint body and saint will. Those who could last for a day in the divine tribulation had their bodies sanctified and were immortal with heaven and earth. And those who could last for 3 days almost all had the potential to become supremes. Since ancient times, those who truly stood at the top of the world and ruled over a realm were mostly those who had been cleansed for more than 7 days in the divine tribulation. Above that, they were truly unique in the 9 heavens. It was said that when Gu Chao Ci became a saint, she had lasted for 49 days in the divine tribulation. Therefore, on the day she became a saint, she was known as the Azure Sequence. She was even seen as the next Azure Great Emperor. Unfortunately, her cultivation level had fallen and her future was uncertain. It was somewhat lamentable. And now, the reason why Ling Xiao was not in a hurry to become a saint was because he was waiting for an opportunity to temper his body. He hoped that he could seize more of the qi of heaven and earth in this opportunity. Of course, some disciples of ancient sects and clans would sometimes use the power of spiritual treasures to resist the divine tribulation in order to safely enter the saint realm. Such people were mostly called false saints. Even if they could cultivate to the peak of the saint realm, their combat power and physical body could not compete with a true saint realm expert. Their path to immortality had completely come to an end. But even so, in the Azure Heavens, the saint realm was already the peak combat power of a force. Since ancient times, there seemed to be many people who had truly stepped into the Supremes. But in terms of a number of living beings, they were still very rare. They were the foundation of the various clans. This was why the heavenly sovereign of the Foliaceae had been killed with a single order that day had caused such a huge commotion. If there were no accidents, the heavenly sovereign's lifespan could be said to be very long. They were the fortune of a clan at its peak. Ling people's dominance was evident. Ling Xiao lowered his head and glanced at his arms. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. During this period of time, he had been using the villain points to temper his body. Now, he had forged 100 of the 3,000 sword bones. With his current cultivation, even a wisp of sword intent could kill anyone below the saint realm. With a thought, Ling Xiao suddenly appeared in the ancient palace of the Divine Mountain. He looked up at the beautiful figure in the phoenix robe who had broken through the door. His eyes suddenly narrowed. The fortune turned into a sea, gushing out from the top of Gu Chao Ci's head like a sun. Thousands of auspicious rays, mysterious and yellow, a kind of realm power, gradually formed in a 7-foot radius. Chaotic dragon phoenix, immortal body. Wife, why are you here? Could it be that you miss your husband? Gu Chao Ci's face was cold. She put the jade cauldron in her hand on the table and sat down cross-legged. Then, she took out a few jade bowls of immortal wine from her interspatial ring and said indifferently, "Where's Yi Qingchan?" She went back to the Foliaceae. "Wife, you came all the way here just to give me this cauldron of fresh soup?" Ling Xiao walked behind Gu Chao Ci and hugged her from behind. He whispered in her ear, "Wife, I'll be touched by you." Feeling the warmth by her ear, Gu Chao Ci's pretty face froze. She struggled out of Ling Xiao's embrace. Touched? I don't believe that demons have such vulgar emotions. Let them come in together. Okay. Ling Xiao smiled faintly and said calmly, "Our Hut, cousin Wei Yong, Jean Honor, my wife personally made fresh soup. Come in and have a taste." Chapter 1133. Amitabha. Outside the ancient palace, Yao Guang and the other two were surprised. Jean Honor couldn't help but mutter. Would Gu Chao be so kind? Could it be that the soup was poisoned? Miss Han, be careful with your words. Praising the Empress is young master's fiancée. I heard that young master fought 3 saints alone, killed the divine spirit crown prince, and crippled the Shi family's prodigy, Shi Haoyan. If you don't want to anger young master, you'd better restrain yourself. Xianyuan Weiyang looked deeply at Jin Han, and reminded her softly. This Xianyuan princess was simple-minded and didn't understand the insidiousness of the world. However, she was still a descendant of an emperor clan and wasn't ignorant. Gu Chao Ci was obviously young master's reverse scale. Even if she casually provoked her, young master would be furious, let alone Jin Han. Oh, haha, Miss Weiyang, so you're young master's cousin. I thought. Jin Han, smiled and reached out to grab Xianyuan Weiyang's arm. You and young master are so close. You don't look like siblings. Miss Han, be careful with your words. Xianyuan Weiyang's face flushed red, and she took the lead to walk into the ancient palace. When the 3 of them walked into the palace, they saw that Ling Xiao had already filled their bowls with fresh soup and was drinking wine by himself. Try it. Ling Xiao smiled gently, picked up one of the jade bowls, and drank it. Instantly, he felt a warm feeling travel through his body. His spirit energy was boiling, and his blood was surging. Even with his temperament, a look of surprise appeared on his face at this moment. Jin Han, and the others similarly revealed a wisp of astonishment when they saw the Tao aura and divine radiance rippling around Ling Xiao. However, at this moment, Yao Guang seemed to be hesitating and softly chanted a Buddhist name. Haha, Arhut. As the saying goes, wine and meat pass through the intestines, but Buddha's heart remains. Buddha talks about karma, and everything is empty. Arhut, please don't let down my wife's efforts. Ling Xiao had a smile on his face as he scooped out another bowl from a cauldron. He shook his head slightly and said, I didn't expect my wife to have such skills. Looks like your husband will be able to enjoy life in the future. Gulp. Jin Han, and Xianyuan Weiyang both scooped a spoonful and took a sip. Their eyes flashed with shock. After that, the 2 of them no longer had any misgivings, and they lowered their heads and drank all the soup in the jade bowl. Seeing this, Yao Guang became even more curious. Finally, under Ling Xiao's gaze, he took a small bite. It felt a little numb. Praising the Empress, this soup is delicious. What kind of spiritual material was used to make it? Xianyuan Weiyang's face was flushed red. It was obvious that she couldn't resist the spiritual energy in the soup. She felt dizzy. 1,000-year snow lotus, 10,000-year ginseng, pearl powder from the Wuji deep sea, desert Ganoderma from the northern wilderness, and Gu Chao Ci turned around and looked at Ling Xiao with her clear eyes. Xianyuan Weiyang counted with his fingers and memorized all the spiritual materials. He couldn't help but feel curious. Although these spiritual materials were precious, they weren't rare in the world. However, the spiritual energy in this soup almost made her break through on the spot. Could it be that the method of making this soup was unique? What else is there? Empress, tell me. There's also the blood-bone demon core of a pure-blooded and extremely beautiful supremacy realm dragon lady. Puffed. Just as Gu Chao Ci finished speaking, Yao Guang spat out a mouthful of filth. Xianyuan Weiyang and Jin Han's faces turned pale instantly. They almost vomited on the spot. At this moment, the 3 of them were filled with indescribable fear and shock. Supremacy realm dragon lady? All pure-blooded dragons either had a powerful background or were the descendants of the most powerful demons. Gu Chao Ci actually slaughtered a pure-blooded dragon lady and used her blood-bone demon core to make soup for Ling Xiao? How many people in the entire Azure world had the guts to do so? Of course, demons devoured humans. Humans also liked to eat demons with powerful bloodlines for cultivation. However, to Xianyuan Weiyang and the other 2, it wasn't that they didn't dare to kill a dragon. However, this extremely beautiful dragon lady. Was Gu Chao Ci hinting at something? Umitba, it's a sin. Yao Guang frowned and looked serious. Everyone, how does it taste? Gu Chao Ci's face didn't change at all. The mysterious master behind Lei Yin might be related to the Realm Lord. Therefore, Ling Xiao would oppose this person sooner or later. Of course, even if her guess was wrong, with Ling Xiao's means, it wouldn't be too difficult for him to hide this matter. Ba, praising the Empress, aren't you afraid that you'll be killed because of this? Hearing this, Gu Chaoxiai didn't reply. Instead, she looked at Ling Xiao. From the beginning to the end, the young master of the Ling people's expression didn't change at all. When he saw Gu Chaoxiai looking at him, he revealed a gentle smile. Wife, why are you looking at me? Of course, your husband thinks that this soup tastes great. Ling Xiao's lips curled into a sinister smile. He looked at Gu Chaoxiai with a deep meaning. I've said it before. In this azure sky world, whoever dares to provoke my wife will die without a doubt. Wife, do you need me to lead the Black Devil Guards and exterminate this Dragon Lady's clan to prevent more trouble? Hearing Ling Xiao's words, Yao Guang and the other two girls were even more shocked. He didn't even ask a single question and wanted to exterminate the entire clan? How domineering, how doting was this? Inexplicably, although the three girls felt that this was inappropriate, they were still envious. They were envious that no matter what Gu Chaoxiai did, the young master would always stand behind her and shield her from all the wind and rain. There's no need for that. This dragon lady wanted to look for you, but I happened to meet her and killed her. Gu Chaoxiai played it down, but the meaning behind her words made Yao Guang and the other two girls' expressions freeze. Xinyuan Weiyang especially lowered his head and sipped the wine in his cup. He didn't even dare to look at Gu Chaoxiai. Haha, since my wife is here, I'll show you around the deity battlefield. Ling Xiao nodded slightly. He grabbed Gu Chaoxiai's hand and walked out of the hall. Xinyuan Weiyang only let out a sigh of relief when the two of them were far away. He looked at the cauldron of dragon soup again and felt a little sad. Don't tell me that one day I'll be caught by this Empress Gu and stewed. It's too scary. It's really too scary. It looks like I can't leave the young master's side in the future. Otherwise, if Gu Chaoxiai wants to kill someone, the young master will most likely help her, right? If that's the case, I'll definitely die. The two of you, Gu Chaoxiai is so unscrupulous. She'll definitely bring trouble to the young master in the future. Why don't we wait for the young master to come back and persuade him together? Jean Han's eyes flickered. Her expression was solemn. Ba, I don't want to drink another bowl of golden crow soup tomorrow. Yao Guang looked at Jean Han calmly and got up to leave. Xinyuan Weiyang nodded fiercely. Miss Han, you're on your own. You. Jean Han's lips trembled. But when she thought of what Ling Xiao said just now, she felt a chill rise from the bottom of her feet. She couldn't help but shiver. Chapter 1134. Speak. What's going on? In the deity battle domain. At this moment, two figures descended from the sky and landed on the peak of a mountain. Ling Xiao released Gu Chaoxiai's hand and looked down at the mountains and rivers with his hands clasped behind his back. Although his tone was still gentle and calm, Gu Chaoxiai felt an inexplicable chill in her ears. Given Ling Xiao's understanding of Gu Chaoxiai, she definitely wouldn't do such a senseless thing just to intimidate the three women. Therefore, there must be a hidden story behind the dragon girl's death. Umph. Gu Chaoxiai snorted coldly. Her face was cold, but she didn't say anything. Given your personality, you wouldn't kill this dragon girl just because she came to find me. What's going on? Ling Xiao turned and looked calmly at Gu Chaoxiai. However, the more calm he was, the more terrified the latter became. A dragon girl wasn't a threat to him at all. However, Ling Xiao didn't like the feeling of being out of control. This girl is called Lei Yun. She's the young master of the Lightning Dragon clan. She's the junior brother of the Celestial Wolf clan's third young master. Looking at the deep eyes in front of her, Gu Chaoxiai didn't dare to act in a fit of pique and said softly, Young master of the Lightning Dragon clan? The third young master of the Celestial Wolf clan? Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows and a smile suddenly appeared on his face. In that case, Gu Chaoxiai's actions had given Zi Yin a great opportunity. It seemed that the third young master of the Celestial Wolf clan had already died. Ling Xiao had heard about what had happened to the Celestial Wolf clan recently. In order to prove his innocence, the clan master of the Celestial Wolf clan had voluntarily allowed the other 9 demon lords to search his soul and become mentally retarded. As for the third young master, he most likely wanted to kill him and colluded with Lei Yun to seek revenge. However, Gu Chaoxiai found out and killed him. Previously, when Gu Ying was hiding in the dark and following Gu Chaoxiai, he had already seen some of the hidden guards under the Emperor's control. Now it seemed that his fiancée had really helped him solve many problems behind his back. That's right. This third young master of the Welkin Wolf clan is called Zhang Jioji. He's at the Exalt realm, and he's a hybrid of a human and a demon. He was expelled by the Welkin Wolf clan at a young age, and he's only returned to the clan recently. After he found out about what happened to the Welkin Wolf clan, he decided to come to the Azure continent to investigate the truth. Gu Chaoxiai said indifferently, her beautiful face carrying a rare trace of grievance. Just now, Ling Xiao was angry. He actually got angry. What a waste of my good intentions. Wait, hearing this, a hint of surprise appeared on Ling Xiao's face. He had left the clan when he was young and had just returned to the clan. Just from the sound of it, it was obvious that he was destined to be born. Wife, you're wasting it. You killed Zhang Jioji too. No, the reason I'm here today is to inform you of this matter so that there won't be any unforeseen events. Gu Chaoxiai sighed softly. Although this third young master of the Welkin Wolf clan had fallen into the Stupa abyss that day, he was most likely dead. However, these few days, Gu Chaoxiai kept feeling uneasy, as if something big was going to happen. Therefore, she ran over to Ling Xiao with the intention of reminding Ling Xiao. She had concealed her appearance, but this Zhang Jioji originally came for Ling Xiao. Once he had a fortuitous encounter in the Stupa abyss, things would become complicated. No. Ling Xiao's eyes trembled slightly. Not only was there not a trace of anger on his face, but there was also a trace of joy on his face. Wife, tell me in detail what happened that day. Okay. Gu Chaoxiai frowned slightly. Obviously, she didn't understand why Ling Xiao was so happy. She immediately recounted what had happened that day in detail. Stupa abyss? Ling Xiao nodded slightly. The soul light in his eyes was resplendent, and he was already pondering in his heart. To be able to escape from Gu Chaoxiai's hands, this Zhang Jioji's luck must be extremely terrifying. At the very least, it should be close to Yang Yuan's. However, in a forbidden area like the Stupa abyss, even if there was a fortuitous encounter, it would most likely be a demonic inheritance. In this case, as long as this Tian Ming came out alive, there might be something evil on him. In this case, it wasn't impossible to make use of it. Lei Yun's death was most likely unknown to Zhang Jioji, but the Lightning Dragon clan definitely had her soul tablet. In other words, the Lightning Dragon clan should already be searching for the person who killed Lei Yun. In this way, if Zhang Jioji was originally an evil demon and deliberately concealed his identity, wouldn't it be very clear that Lei Yun was traveling with him and the murderer? Of course, the prerequisite for this plan to work was that the Lightning Dragon clan temporarily didn't encounter Zhang Jioji. With the Lightning Dragon clan's foundation, it wouldn't be easy to find a young man in the Azure Sky world, even if all the experts were sent out. Moreover, Zhang Jioji had just experienced a robbery and was most likely a frightened bird now. As long as the Lightning Lord had some brains, he wouldn't search for someone with great fanfare under the premise that he didn't know the enemy clearly. Just now, you said that Zhang Jioji and Lei Yun were senior and junior brothers? However, what made Ling Xiao slightly puzzled was what kind of template this Zhang Jioji was. The Son of Heaven's mandate had a miserable background. However, what differentiated their templates was the golden finger obtained from this miserable experience. For example, someone fell into a mountain stream and found a ring. Someone's bloodline was dug out and awakened a stronger bloodline. Or someone accidentally picked up a stone that contained the inheritance of a celestial venerable. In any case, the more ridiculous it was, the higher the luck. Only by understanding their templates could he take the right medicine and kill people without leaving a trace. Yes, According to what I know, these two people have a hidden expert as their master. This person is called Qing Mu. He is from the Demon Clan and lives in seclusion. Ordinary Demon Clan members don't know about his existence at all. Only some experts of the Demon Clan call him a prophet. Gu Chaoxiai's brows were gloomy. In the past few days, she had sent Chun Yu and Luo Yin to the Demon Clan. However, she didn't find out much useful information about Lei Yun and Zhang Jiuji's master. Those who truly understood this sovereign were mostly the core figures of the Demon Clan. Now that Lei Yun had just died, she didn't dare to be too brazen for fear of attracting suspicion. Oh, mysterious master? Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly and smiled. Could it be the famous master, Lu Tianming? That's right. This person is extremely mysterious and never comes out. I only found out that he has taken in a total of 6 disciples in the past 300 years. The first 5 are all female disciples with monstrous backgrounds. Lei Yun is ranked 5th. 5 senior sisters? Monstrous backgrounds? Hearing this, a sincere smile finally appeared on Ling Xiao's face. It was very clear that Zhang Jiuji not only had a powerful master, but also 5 powerful senior sisters. With Lei Yun's identity, she was one of the top figures in the Demon Clan. Not to mention being killed, only a few people dared to provoke her. It seemed that the remaining 4 senior sisters of Zhang Jiuji were also very famous. Moreover, these senior sisters were usually involved in different fields. For example, the young master of the Demon Clan, the saintess of the Human Clan. Some of them had powerful cultivation, some were beautiful, some were good at playing flutes, some knew music, and some were rich. Interesting, it was getting more and more interesting. Humph. Shameless. Gu Chaoxiai snorted coldly, and a trace of coldness flashed across her face. Wife, you misunderstood. Cough. Has the Thunder Dragon clan made any movements recently? Ling Zhao's expression turned cold, and he smiled awkwardly. He wasn't smiling at the 5 beautiful senior sisters, but at Zhang Jiuji, this new leak. However, it seemed that there was no way to explain it. No, the Lightning Dragon race seems to have intentionally concealed the matter of Lei Yun's death. They didn't make any strange movements. This divine lightning is something that accompanied Lei Yun. According to my guess, her master might be related to the Realm Lord. You can settle the remaining matters yourself. I'm tired. I'll return first. After saying that, Gu Chaoxiai didn't hesitate at all. She took a step forward, and the cry of a phoenix resounded. A cyan phoenix shadow descended from the sky and carried Gu Chaoxiai out of the realm of deities. Chapter 1135. Companion Lightning? Ling Xiao lowered his head and looked at the purplish-black lightning sealed in the sacred cauldron. He now understood Gu Chaoxiai's temperament very well. Don't be fooled by her cold appearance all day long. But in her heart, she was extremely concerned about his matters. Otherwise, she wouldn't have traveled thousands of miles to the demon territory to investigate the Celestial Wolf Clan and the Realm Lord. In the end, Ling Xiao didn't care about the Celestial Wolf Clan or the Thunder Dragon Clan. However, this woman was afraid that Ling Xiao would be careless and be threatened. This kind of secret concern was rare. However, a demonic genius who was born with divine lightning would most likely have some luck on his body. It was a pity that he was killed by Gu Chaoxiai. However, with this lightning companion item, he had a way to deal with Zhang Jiuji. Moreover, what surprised Ling Xiao even more was that he finally had some clues about the Realm Lord's whereabouts. Qing Mu Supreme? Ling Xiao's expression only turned cold when the phoenix figure disappeared into the horizon. A new storm had appeared. With his current strength, it was very difficult for ordinary heaven's mandate to threaten him. However, it was at this time that he couldn't be careless, especially now that the Realm Lord was hiding in the dark. A small flaw could bring unimaginable disaster. As for whether that demon prophet was just an empty name or could really see through everything, damn, I didn't kill him. If he really came out and caused trouble for Gu Chaoxiai, things would be much simpler. Folded Shadow, Xiong Huan, Shi Patian. Following Ling Zhao's shout, 3 silhouettes instantly appeared before him and bowed to him. Master, folded shadow, take a few shadow guards and personally go to the demon territory. Investigate the recent movements of the Celestial Wolf Clan and the Thunder Dragon Clan. Then find traces of a powerhouse called Qing Mu Supreme. Xiong Huan, Sherpatian, you two guard Stupa Abyss. If you find any suspicious youth, immediately send me a message. Ling Xiao said indifferently. The three of them immediately bowed and flew towards the horizon. Regardless of the identity of Zhang Jiuji's 5 senior sisters, everything would come to light once they found Qing Mu Supreme. And now that Ling Xiao already knew the identity of this person of destiny, as long as he stepped into the Azure Continent, he would definitely reveal a flaw. At that time, he only needed to set up a chess game, and when he fell into the net, he would be consigned to eternal damnation. After all, Qin Shun was already dead. Now that several months had passed, his influence was gradually fading, and Zhang Jiuji might be the next person to take the blame. Calculating the time, there was still a little more than a month before the Dao Heaven Manor Lord's lecture. At that time, the Azure Sky realm would be bustling with activity again. As for Ling Xiao, he only needed to hide in the dark, harvest the fortunes, and develop steadily. Sooner or later, this world would fall into his control. After all, Gu Chaoxiai's spy was not as experienced as Dai Shadow. If this great demon entered the demon region to investigate Qing Mu Supreme, there would most likely be some unexpected surprises. At the very least, now that Ziyan had returned to the clan, with her help in the dark, it would definitely be twice the result with half the effort. Just as Ling Xiao was thinking to himself, a buzzing sound suddenly came from the distant void. Immediately after, a familiar black-clothed figure quietly appeared about 10 feet in front of him. Lord Guiying, Ling Xiao's eyes narrowed. Previously, when Gu Chaoxiai was attacked by an assassin, he had sent Guiying to investigate the mastermind. Looking at the expression of this former subordinate of the Sky Demon, it seemed like things were not going well. My lord, I followed your orders and tracked down the 2 people from the Shenwu Empire. In the end, they did not return to the Imperial Empire. Instead, they went to the easternmost land. However, they were killed by an earthly supreme expert on their way there. When I captured that supreme being, I only found a token on his body. Before I could check his soul sea, he destroyed his own soul sea. Guiying's expression was terrified. He bowed to Ling Xiao and said, I was careless. It's fine. Where's the token? Ling Xiao's eyes were calm. He was not surprised at all. A force that dared to attack Gu Chaoxiai was definitely a supreme existence in the Azure Sky world. Especially now, everyone in the Azure Sky world knew that Gu Chaoxiai was Ling Xiao's reverse scale. Whoever touched her would die. At this time, someone actually dared to attack Gu Chaoxiai so openly. How could they not be fully prepared? Here, Guiying presented a green ancient token with both hands. From the outside, there wasn't anything special about it. However, the word kill on it faintly revealed a majestic aura. It seemed to be filled with invisible killing intent. The longer he looked at it, the more frightened he was. Kill. Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly, a hint of a smile at the corner of his mouth. In the Azure Sky Force, there was only one killing shrine that he knew was named after the killing shrine. However, Ling Xiao was curious. If there was an Earth Supreme, or even a Heavenly Supreme expert in this force, how did Xia Chun control this force when he was only an Emperor God? Back when Ling Xiao had killed Xia Chun, he had seen his memories. He had used the name of the Slayer Emperor to create the Slayer Shrine. Could it be that there were other inheritances behind the killing shrine? Interesting. It was getting more and more interesting. However, since the plan had failed this time, the person behind the scenes would not act rashly in the near future. What Ling Xiao wanted to do was to make them let down their guard temporarily. Then he would find the force behind the killing token and the person behind the killing shrine. Qingyang? Qi Luo? According to Ling Xiao's guess, one of them must have some other identity. Ling Xiao had planted a soul seal on Xia Jimin. However, this girl was brought out of the sect when she was young and grew up in the Void Dao sect. However, The master behind her must know some secrets of the killing shrine. When the time came, Ling Xiao only needed to lure this person out. Everything would come to light naturally. Gu Ying, continue to hide in the dark and guard Gu Chao Ci. Don't alert the enemy. Ling Xiao pondered for a moment and said softly, although Gu Chao Ci would not meet with any accidents in the near future, the death of a sovereign expert would definitely arouse suspicion. If Ling Xiao was the master of this force, he would also send people to carefully investigate the matter. And with Spirit Shadow's strength, as long as there was the slightest bit of movement, it would not escape his perception. Yes, master. Gu Ying bowed, and his figure immediately disappeared into the void. Only when he was far away did Ling Xiao turn around and head toward the sacred mountain in the region. At this moment, Xinyuan Weiyang, Jin Han and Yao Wang had been waiting for a long time in front of the sacred mountain's ancient palace. Seeing Ling Xiao land alone, a hint of surprise appeared on the faces of the three girls. Young master, praising the empress, has left. Xinyuan Weiyang was a little nervous. At this moment, she had already guessed why Gu Chao Ci had come here today. It was none other than warning them to pay attention to their words and actions. They should not act recklessly like that dragon girl. Yes. Ling Xiao smiled calmly and walked toward the palace. Oh, that's right. The dragon that Gu Chao Ci killed was a demonic woman who would not shrink from any evil. However, this demonic woman has some background. Don't complicate things for the time being. Yes, young master. Hearing this, the three women were enlightened. No wonder Gu Chao Ci dared to act so recklessly. It turned out that there was a secret behind it. Of course, even if she had killed the young master of the Lightning Dragon clan, the three women would not dare to scheme against her. After all, provoking Gu Chao Ci was no different from provoking Ling Xiao. Chapter 1136. So it's a demonic dragon causing trouble. We misunderstood and praising the empress. A wisp of guilt instantly appeared on Xinyuan Weiyang's face as she looked at the black-clothed figure that walked into the palace. No wonder praising the empress was favored by the young master. She killed the demonic dragon at all costs to get rid of a calamity for the common people. How was she different from the young master? What kind of a mortal couple was this? One was gentle and handsome with a unique temperament. He had a noble wish to bring peace to the human race. The other was cold and arrogant. She was originally a domineering empress who was willing to sacrifice everything behind the young master's back. It felt like it was a good thing. Amitabha. Yao Wang lowered her head and chanted Buddha's name. She seemed to feel that the situation in the Azure world was getting more and more complicated. However, from the beginning to the end, she had a vague feeling that the cause of this chaotic world was Ling Xiao's alone. Was it an illusion? Or was she deceived by him again? Time passed slowly. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. Suddenly, a ray of golden light shot up into the sky from the Buddha abyss and evolved into many strange phenomena. Vaguely, there seemed to be 9 blood suns across the sky, emitting a dazzling, evil light. I finally succeeded. Zhang Jiuji was overjoyed. He looked up to the sky and roared. In his hand, there was an ink-colored ancient sword surrounded by multicolored light. It was unrestrained and sharp. The terrifying gravitational force that had enveloped him had finally dissipated completely at this moment. Congratulations, kid. Inyu's figure appeared from the sword and smiled gently at Zhang Jiuji. Haha, it's all thanks to Senior's help. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to suppress the evil energy in the sword. Zhang Jiuji smiled humbly and looked down at the ancient sword in his hand. He could feel that as long as he willed it, the area around him would turn into a domain and manifest infinite gravity. This was the power of the sword. It was called the Buddha domain. It formed a world where Yin could manifest and help him kill his enemies. Suddenly, Zhang Jiuji's heart was filled with pride. His Tao heart that had been attacked by Gu Chao Ci became even more tenacious and urgent. With this sword in hand, what was there to fear, even if it was an expert of the saint realm? Brat, Although I can appear in the Buddha domain, you have to know that my identity is somewhat special. Once it is discovered by others, you will be consigned to eternal damnation. So, don't provoke an opponent that is too strong for now. With your saint body, as long as you cultivate step by step, you will step into the sovereign realm sooner or later. The more you looked at Zhang Jiuji, the more she found him pleasing to the eye. Over the past hundreds of thousands of years, it wasn't as if she hadn't encountered any living beings with powerful innate talents. However, none of them were able to control the sword, and, in the end, they became the Yin Moon's food. As for Zhang Jiuji, not only did he possess the good fortune saint body, but his mental state and Tao heart could also be said to be flawless. Such a young man had a promising future. Senior, don't worry. I understand. Zhang Jiuji nodded slightly. The Rakshasa race was the Nine Heavens demon race. Of course, he couldn't let anyone know about such a secret. He didn't even plan to tell his 5 senior sisters. After all, once this matter was exposed, he would completely bear the name of an evil demon. Especially now that the sky demon had appeared, all the living beings in the Azure world were already in a state of panic. Any person or force that was close to the demon race would not be able to escape destruction in the end. The celestial wolf race was a good example. Therefore, Moon could only be used as a trump card to save his life or when he was sure to kill. With the Buddha domain in hand, Zhang Jiuji could be said to be invincible with his current skills. It was a pity that this sword was not called Zhu Xian. Phew, Senior, you are hiding in the sword. No one should be able to detect it, right? Don't worry. This sword is the sword of the celestial race. It is full of immortal energy and can conceal all auras. As long as I don't show myself, even a heavenly sovereign won't be able to detect it. Moon smiled confidently, and the last trace of worry in Zhang Jiuji's heart disappeared. In that case, it's time to go to Dao Sky City and meet up with 5th senior sister. Zhang Jiuji looked up at the abyss and calculated the time. He had been in the Buddha domain for almost half a month. 5th senior sister should have arrived at Dao Sky City long ago. She should be anxious now, right? Zhang Jiuji was excited when he thought that he would be able to meet his 2nd senior sister and the others. It was said that the 5 senior sisters each had a powerful background and were peerless in their generation. In that case, the path to immortality had suddenly become a little more beautiful. Father, don't worry. This time, I will be famous in the Azure world and become the light of the generation. When I become a saint of heaven and earth, I will use this glory to ascend to the position of young master. At that time, who among the 10 races of the demon race would dare to look down on the celestial wolf race? However, just as Zhang Jiuji was fantasizing, Moon's eyes trembled. She looked up at the void and said, Jiuji, we should go. Senior, what's wrong? Zhang Jiuji frowned and looked solemn. He could feel a hint of vigilance from Moon's tone. Your enemies don't seem to have given up looking for you. Moon sneered. A trace of doubt flashed in the depths of her eyes. They should be 2 saints. However, one of them has a strange aura. Forget it. Let's leave this place first. Just now, she could feel 2 divine soul fluctuations suddenly spreading out from the void. These 2 fluctuations both contained a wisp of demonic will. However, one of them gave her a very familiar feeling. It was also a little different. It was an extremely terrifying corpse will. However, under the cover of this corpse chi, it was a wisp. Impossible. Their realms were not right. Moreover, this world was no longer the place where they could roam freely. Even if some of their old friends were still alive, how could they dare to roam the world in such an unbridled manner? Senior, what's wrong? Zhang Jiuji seemed to have noticed the complicated expression on Moon's face. At this moment, he saw a trace of longing and nostalgia in Moon's eyes. It's nothing. Let's go. You and I have just been born. It's better not to cause trouble. Moon sighed and returned to the 9 Suns Buddha's sword. Let's go this way and avoid those 2 saints. Okay. In the end, Zhang Jiuji didn't say much. He followed Moon's instructions and walked deeper into the abyss. Chapter 1137. The Underworld, Wretched Earth. This was a gloomy and deathly silent world. As far as the eye could see, the heavens and the earth were dark, and there was an endless amount of nether fog rising from the horizon. There was no sun or moon, and it was desolate since ancient times. In the center of this world, there was a magnificent ancient palace. It was tens of thousands of feet tall, and it was completely black. At this moment, there were many figures with terrifying auras sitting in the palace. Their bodies were covered by nether energy, and they were roaring like the sea. However, these nether race experts all had different appearances. There were tall creatures with human bodies and horns, and there were short and strong midgets wearing demonic armor. However, these people all had fearful expressions, and their eyes were gloomy. In the palace, there was a figure wearing a dark gold divine cannon. He was holding his chin with one hand, and he seemed to be sleeping. It was a young man with long eyebrows and fair skin. There was a diamond-shaped mark between his eyebrows that looked like a scale. It was black and purple in color, and it looked strange and mysterious. Although his divine face was a little feminine, it was also peerlessly handsome, and it gave people a feeling of nobility and elegance. At a certain moment, there seemed to be a trace of worry between his eyebrows, and it caused the atmosphere in the palace to suddenly freeze. In fact, even the faces of the living beings of the nether dimension who possessed terrifying auras turned pale, and they even gasped for breath carefully. The young man slowly opened his eyes and yawned lazily. He lowered his head and looked at the people below. "Have you found out, Netherlord?" "Not yet, but it is said that the reincarnation of the Nether God is a young man who has awakened the Nether God's sacred body. He is born with a sense of destiny. Now, the people of the Nether race have been spreading that the Nether God will be the opportunity for our race to break the seal and return to heaven and earth." One of the Nether race experts stood up and bowed carefully to the young man. "The reincarnation of the Nether God?" The feminine young man smiled brightly. However, at this moment, the Nether race expert felt a chill rising from the bottom of his feet. Before he could kneel and beg for mercy, black flames suddenly surrounded him. In just one breath, he was burned into nothingness. The entire palace was silent. All the experts of the Nether clan lowered their heads while terror filled their eyes. However, they weren't surprised at all. Obviously, they'd already thoroughly understood the temperament of the Netherlord. If the Master has truly returned from reincarnation, I am naturally willing to return the Underworld clan to him. However, if someone is deliberately spreading rumors, I will kill them without mercy. The effeminate young man smiled gently and walked towards the back of the palace. "Oh, by the way, tell the 10 great Yama kings to find the reincarnation of the god of the Underworld. I am very interested in him." "Yes." Only when the young man's figure was far away did everyone in the hall heave a sigh of relief. However, at this moment, everyone's eyes contained a faint trace of worry. With the disposition of the Netherlord, even if the young man in the rumors was really the reincarnation of the Nether God, how could the Netherlord be willing to return the vast Netherworld to him? However, when they thought of this lord's methods, a thick chill filled their hearts. Forget it. He could only wait and see if there was anyone else among the 10 great kings of hell who still had fear in their hearts. At the same time, at the edge of the underworld, Chun Qing Shan was dressed in black and was sitting in a pavilion. After coming to the Netherworld, he realized that this world was not much different from the Green Sky world. Even the living beings were of all shapes and sizes, and there were all kinds of them. However, the spiritual energy in this world was thin and it was dark. All the living beings of the Underworld clan were pale and looked extremely weak. However, after merging with the mark of the god of the Underworld, Chun Qing Shan vaguely felt that there were 10 extremely powerful auras in the Netherworld, and they seemed to be related to this mark. Perhaps they were the key to him controlling this world. Qing Shan, when a graceful figure suddenly walked over from afar, Chun Qing Shan put down his wine cup and looked forward. A rare trace of gentleness appeared on his face. "You are back. Ever since that day, When the dream demon followed him to death, Chen Qingshan's disposition had changed a little. Originally, when Gu Xier died, it caused him to fall into a demonic state overnight, and his disposition became cold. Other than Ling Xiao and the dream demon, almost no one could cause his emotions to fluctuate. However, the current him seemed to have more of a smile on his face, and even his gaze was not as cold as before. Yes, Qingshan, I have found out that the netherworld is now divided into 10 lands, and there are 10 underworld kings in charge. Their cultivation levels are unknown, but they all submit to one person, the current underworld lord. It is said that this person used to be the servant of the god of the underworld. The dream demon walked up to Chen Qingshan and smiled softly. 10 underworld kings? Servant of the god of the underworld? Chen Qingshan's eyes narrowed. Was it coincidence? Why did his mark of the god of the underworld also have 10 waves of soul consciousness? It seemed that he had to find a chance to verify it. I understand. Let's stay here for a few days. However, with Chen Qingshan's current strength, he could easily kill an ordinary saint, let alone the 10 underworld kings. Since the Lord had asked him to control this world, it would not be something that could be done overnight. The most important thing now was to enter the saint realm as soon as possible. Only then would he have the opportunity to control the world. Even if the underworld lord used to be the servant of the god of the underworld. After so many years, it was hard to guarantee that he would not be disloyal. It was safer to be safe. Deity Battlefield, Central Divine Mountain. Ling Xiao frowned as he looked at the voice transmission talisman in his hand. His eyes seemed to be deep in thought. It had been 3 days since Xiong Huan and the others went to Stupa Abyss. However, the two of them did not see any living beings walk out of the abyss. However, based on Zhang Jiuji's experience, it was most likely the mandate of heaven. It was impossible for him to die so easily. Could it be that he had already obtained the opportunity and left Level Mountain Domain? Now that he was being hunted, he would not dare to show himself so easily in the short term. How was he going to find this leak? Ling Zhao's eyes narrowed slightly, and a smile suddenly appeared at the corner of his mouth. According to Gu Chaoxiai, the mandate of heaven had walked out of the demon domain to verify Song Ning's identity and prove the innocence of the Sirius clan. Now that Lei Yun had been killed, and he did not know about it, he would definitely secretly search for her after he stepped out of the abyss. Moreover, the mandate of heaven was used to being so promising. Wherever there was an opportunity, they would be there. Whenever there was a commotion, they would join in. They would probably not miss the Dao Tian Academy. However, once Zhang Jiuji arrived at Dao Heaven City, they would miss the best opportunity to set up a trap. If the powerhouses of the Thunder Dragon clan found him before Ling Xiao, it would be more troublesome to make him take the blame. It seemed that it was time to give this mandate of heaven some benefits. Since he was looking for him, he would take the initiative to appear. In this way, why should he worry that he would not fall into the trap? With that thought in mind, Ling Xiao suddenly took a step forward. The dragon shadow beneath him appeared and rushed in the direction of Level Mountain Domain. With Zhang Jiuji's cultivation, even if he rushed with all his might, he would not be able to reach the center of Azure Sky. Ling Xiao only needed to set up some traps halfway. Even if he wanted to hide his identity, he would not want to miss it. Young master, wait for me. Chapter 1138. Master, Master. At the peak of the mountain, Xianyuan Weiyang stepped forward and chased after Ling Xiao. Hearing the shout behind him, Ling Xiao frowned and slowed down. He waited until Xianyuan Weiyang was beside him before he continued to fly. Master, where are you going? I heard that a treasure has appeared in the Tianyan region. I'm going to check it out. Ling Xiao's tone was calm. He summoned Lin Meng, and she appeared beside him, scaring Xianyuan Weiyang. Lin Meng has been in the territory and has never seen Xianyuan Weiyang. Therefore, the two women's faces were full of curiosity. They checked each other out from head to toe, and their eyes were full of surprise. Meng, this is the Xianyuan royal family's princess. Ling Xiao smiled gently. Lin Meng cultivated with the moon of Xianyuan for a long time and had a deep relationship with her. Hearing Xianyuan Weiyang's identity, Lin Ming was shocked and hurriedly bowed. So it's Princess Xianyuan. Since the beginning, this destined lady had been timid. She was respectful towards the other women around Ling Xiao. It was exactly because of this that Ling Xiao intended to give her a new background so that it could temper her Dao heart. The Tianyan region was a region that one must pass between the Southern Demon region and the Azure region. The biggest sect in this region was the Holy Fire sect. Rumor has it that there was a heaven's favorite in this sect called Cheng Feng. He was one of the 100 heroes of the Azure region. According to Ling Xiao's investigation, this person's talent was originally average. It was because he merged with the spiritual fire of heaven and earth that he became a supreme and was accepted as a disciple by the Holy Fire sect. The spiritual fire was a spiritual object of heaven and earth. With the spiritual fire of heaven and earth, Cheng Feng's battling capabilities were terrifying. Ling Xiao guessed that this person was most likely the one who killed Elder Ling and sent his soul to the lower realm. Usually, such villains would not have a good ending. Although Cheng Feng had obtained the blazing scripture, it wasn't complete. That was why he was suffering from a hidden illness and living a life worse than death. It was said that the Sacred Flame sect master had tried to find some good medicine to help him suppress his internal injuries, but it was useless. What? Do you think I'm going to kill someone again? Childish. I, Ling Xiao, am the light of the righteous path. Of course, the purpose of this trip is to cure this senior apprentice brother Cheng's hidden illness. As for whether he dies or not, what does that have to do with me? Dying, send out the secret guards and spread the news. Say, a treasure has appeared in the Tianyan region. Ling people's young master, Ling Xiao, is on his way here. Ling Xiao sent a voice transmission with his soul. Then, he seemed to have thought of something. Send someone to find out if the Sacred Fire sect had an expert called Ling or something like that. Yes, Dying was still searching for Qing Mu Supreme in the Demon region. Although the Sacred Fire Ancient sect was a first-rate sect, it wasn't an immortal inheritance. Moreover, Elder Ling was extremely talented in the Tao of Fire. He was definitely not a nobody. A few secret guards could go to the Tianyan region and find out. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. At this time, on the ancient mountain in the center of the Tianyan region, a group of Sacred Fire sect elders were frowning as they looked at a red-robed figure in the hall. Sect Master, I've already sent a disciple to find out, as you instructed. But it seems that no secret realm has appeared in the Tianyan region recently. Impossible. The red-robed, middle-aged man shook his head slightly. His cold and dignified face was solemn. If one looked closely, they would see that his hair was covered in flames. Every strand of it was burning fiercely. Hua Yin, the Sacred Fire sect master, was an 8th-level Saint Realm expert. Just yesterday, there was a rumor in the Tianyan region that Ling Xiao, the young master of the Ling people, was on his way here. But, with the Sacred Fire sect's control over the Tianyan region, he should know if a treasure had appeared. Just in case, Hui Yin still sent a disciple to search the entire region. But in the end, there was still nothing. However, the young master of the Taigu Ling people would not come to the Tianyan region for no reason. What went wrong? Sect Master, there are 3 more days until Cheng Feng comes out of seclusion. Didn't you say that when Feng comes out of seclusion, he will be officially appointed as the successor of the Sacred Fire sect? Since Master Ling Xiao is on his way here, maybe we can invite him to come and watch the ceremony. Below the hall, an old man with white hair and beard said in a deep voice, Yes. Hui Yin frowned slightly and nodded silently. No matter what Ling Xiao came for, as the master of this region, he did not dare to be negligent. Moreover, the young master's arrival might be an opportunity for the Sacred Fire sect. As long as he could win the young master's favor, the Sacred Fire sect might be able to rise to the top of the Azure continent. Go and prepare a divine weapon, preferably a sword. I heard that Master Ling Xiao's sword principle is unparalleled. Let's cater to his taste. Hui Yin looked up at the people in front of the hall. Send another disciple to keep an eye on him. Yes. At the same time, in the Tianyan region, Zhang Jiuji, dressed in a linen robe, was walking in an ancient city. In the past few days, he had deliberately concealed his whereabouts and even disguised his face to avoid being hunted down. Although he had not figured out who wanted to kill him, Zhang Jiuji speculated that there were only two possibilities. One was that Lei Yun's enemy wanted to kill him as well. The other was that someone in the Sirius clan did not want him to be the young master. In addition, he had been in seclusion for 200 years and had just come out. How could he have an enemy? As for Ling Xiao, he had heard many rumors about the young master of the Ling people. It was said that this person was righteous, magnanimous, and had the holy name of the human emperor. Whether this rumor was true or not, no one knew his whereabouts except for the Sirius clan. Even if the young master of the Ling people hated the Sirius clan, he could have just sent people to destroy them. Why would he want to kill him? Therefore, Zhang Jiuji was more inclined to the second possibility. Lei Yun was domineering and was the young master of the Thunder Dragon clan. There must be many people who wanted to kill her secretly. He was just unlucky to have appeared at the right time. Have you heard? Recently, there has been news in the Tianyin region that a treasure will appear in our region. Even the young master of the Ling people has been attracted to it. What? Which young master of the Ling people? In the entire Azure realm, besides young Master Ling Xiao, who dares to take the surname Ling? Burp, is my Prince Charming really coming? No, I have to leave my senior and junior sisters to welcome the young master. The originally quiet ancient city was suddenly bustling with noise. A look of surprise appeared on Zhang Jiuji's face. Master Ling Xiao? This was really someone sent him a pillow when he wanted to sleep? Originally, he had come out this time to find the young master of the Ling people to confirm a matter about Songning. Previously, he was still hesitating about how to meet the young master with his status. Now, it seemed that this problem was solved. Moreover, a treasure that could attract the attention of this young master. Just thinking about it was enough to make one excited. Chapter 1139. In the northern part of the Tianyin region, a golden dragon was flying over. The wind was howling, and there was an endless amount of auspicious light. However, what was terrifying was that such a great demon was pulling a white jade chariot. A young man was sitting in the chariot, and there were beauties on both sides of him. Ling Xiao looked down at the Tianyin region under his feet, and a playful smile appeared on his face. With Long Zhao's speed, it would take him less than 2 days to get here from the Divinity Battle Domain. The reason why he purposely delayed for 2 days was to give Zhang Jiuji enough time to find out about this news. At the same time, he wanted to set up a place of fortune. The Tianyin region was vast. There were countless mountains and forests, so it was normal for there to be some hidden places of fortune. Bai Ling had already arrived here yesterday. Even if there were no secret realms in this region, Ling Xiao could arrange one for Zhang Jiuji. Of course, he had to fatten a pig first. Only then would taste good. Of course, the precondition was that this son of destiny would take the initiative to appear and have the potential to take the blame. Otherwise, Ling Xiao still had a luck-plundering talisman in his hand. Young master, look, what is that? Suddenly, Xinyuan Weiyang stood up from the jade chariot and looked at the sky in the distance, her eyes trembling. Hearing this, Ling Xiao followed her line of sight, only to see that at the end of the world, there were many figures of spiritual light rushing over at an extremely fast speed. There were at least thousands of them. However, these people's cultivation levels were generally at the venerable realm or even lower. Obviously, they were the younger generation of the Tianyin region. Lord Ling Xiao. Ah, I see Lord Ling Xiao. Golden dragon jade chariot, black-robed, immortal face. It's Lord Ling Xiao. It's Lord Ling Xiao. I'm going to collapse. Countless women screamed. Even with Xinyuan Weiyang's temperament, she couldn't help but tremble. She didn't expect the youths of the Tianyin region to be so enthusiastic. However, after thinking about it for a moment, she understood the reason. Half a month ago, Ling Xiao had annihilated the Gone Heaven Divine sect by himself. Moreover, he had killed the young master of the Xiao clan for a servant. Whether it was in terms of character or generosity, it was enough to make people revere him. Moreover, Who would be able to reject a young master of the ancient clan with peerless beauty and a terrifying background? Moreover, this young master's temperament was so gentle and flawless. Lord Ling Xiao, I love you. Sir, please look at me. Young master, my name is Bai Lu, and I am willing to follow young master. I hope young master will accept me as a servant. Some prodigies started to recommend themselves. Ling Xiao stood up and waved at the crowd with a warm expression. Especially when he saw the linen-clothed figure in the crowd, the smile on his face grew even more brilliant. Although this young man's appearance was ordinary and his clothes were ordinary, he shouldn't have attracted any attention. However, such a brilliant luck value was simply like a star in the night sky. It was dazzling and extremely beautiful. 20,000 luck value. Good fortune, sacred body, yin-yang law, sun-moon divine pulse. There was a wisp of extremely obscure demonic qi on his body, which was somewhat similar to the one on Song Ning. It couldn't be wrong. Zhang Jiuji in a mixed destiny. Indeed, he was a big leak. According to Ling Zhao's guess, this model of the Son of Destiny must have a terrifying luck value. However, the 20,000 luck value still surprised him. Could it be that in addition to the holy body and divine pulse, this leak was hiding some other shocking good fortune? Interesting. Ling Xiao smiled brightly and nodded at the prodigies. His demeanor immediately attracted another round of exclamations of admiration. Lord Ling Xiao, until there was a buzzing sound between heaven and earth. A figure with a terrifying aura stepped from the distance and stood in front of Ling Xiao. It's the Sacred Flame Sect Master. I didn't expect Sect Master Huoyin to come personally. Haha, I thought that Huoyin had some backbone. I didn't expect him to be a bootlicker like me. Fellow cultivator, you're wrong. How can bootlickering Lord Ling Xiao be considered a bootlicker? Young master is unparalleled in the world. This is a chance for us to improve ourselves. Sect Master Huoyin. Ling Zhao's eyes were clear, and the corners of his mouth unconsciously curled into a smile. Previously, the secret guards had sent news that there was an expert in the Sacred Fire sect 1,000 years ago. His name was Ling Chun, and he was an amazing talent who had extremely high attainments in both alchemy and fire Dao. Furthermore, the current sect master of the Sacred Fire sect was only his junior brother. If not for his undeserved reputation and indifferent temperament, Huoyin would not have been able to become the sect master, and Cheng Feng was his disciple. Unfortunately, the Way of Heaven was jealous. It was said that 400 years ago, when Ling Chan first tried to merge with the spiritual fire, he burned his body and divine soul. However, Ling Chen's contribution to both alchemy and fire Dao was the key to the Sacred Fire sect's rise to the top. Therefore, even if he died unexpectedly, everyone in the Sacred Fire sect was in awe at the mention of Ling Chen's name. As a successor, Cheng Feng was even accepted as a disciple by Huoyin as an exception. This young man did not disappoint and actually completed what Ling Chen could not do. He merged the spiritual fire of heaven and earth into his body, and from then on, his cultivation improved by leaps and bounds. Now, and even abolished the former young master of the Sacred Fire sect and planned to make Cheng Feng the successor of the Sacred Fire sect. This matter was once spread by the various forces in the Azure Sky realm, and countless experts praised the friendship between Huoyin and Ling Chen. Little did they know that Ling Chen's death was not an accident at all, and the one who should have come to the Heaven Fire region was not Ling Xiao, but Lin Shi. This Cheng Feng should be a small climax of the plot, and the relationship between Lin Shi and Elder Ling would be exaggerated to the extreme. However, it was a pity. Elder Ling, only I can avenge you. Master Ling Xiao. Huoyan's expression was respectful, and he cupped his hands toward Ling Xiao. I heard that young master has come to the Heaven Fire region, so I specially led the elders to welcome you. I hope young master will do me the honor of coming to the Sacred Fire sect to guide your cultivation. Huoyan's smile was humble, and it surprised all the geniuses of the Heaven Fire region. Sect master, you are too polite. A few days ago, I happened to get an ancient scroll, and it recorded the location of a secret realm. Sect Master, take a look and see where it is in the Heaven Fire region. Ling Xiao waved his hand and took out an ancient scroll made of sheepskin from his Qiankuan ring and handed it to Sect Master Huiyan. Huiyan's eyes trembled slightly, and he opened the ancient scroll to take a look. Yes, it is indeed in the Heaven Fire region. It should be in the Thunder Volcano in the northwest. I see. Thank you, Sect Master. This Thunder Volcano was specially selected by Ling Xiao from several regions. Since it was a layout, of course, it had to be as reasonable as possible. Thunder Volcano, listen to me. If I say there's an ancient divine thunder in this mountain, no one will doubt it, right? Everyone, I found this ancient realm by chance. Why don't we go and check it out together? Ling Xiao smiled gently, and he raised his head to look at the geniuses of the Heaven Fire region. His eyes were extremely cold. What, young master, intends to share this secret realm with us? Chapter 1140. Young master, you mean? Huiyan's eyes trembled, and he was also shocked. Everyone wanted to monopolize a secret realm, especially one that had never appeared in the world and could only be opened with ancient maps and spiritual items. There were many real treasures hidden in it. However, judging from Ling Xiao's words, was he planning to share the mystic realm with everyone? What else was there to say? Lord Ling Xiao, you are righteous. Sect Leader Hua, I will go to the Sacred Fire sect later. Ling Xiao looked at Huiyan calmly, which stunned the Saint Realm expert and made him lower his head in fear. Huiyan, you have lived for so long, but you still want to have peaches. With young master's strength, even if all the talents went together, how could they compete with him? However, if they went, how could young master search for treasures in peace? Yes. Young master, the young master ceremony of the Sacred Fire sect is in 3 days. I will invite all the sect leaders of the Tianyan territory to a banquet. I hope young master will do me the honor and come to the Sacred Fire Mountain to watch the ceremony. Huiyan looked serious and took out a red ancient sword from his interspatial ring. He presented it to Ling Xiao with both hands. Young master, your presence brings light to the Tianyan territory. Please accept this small gift as a token of my respect. Oh, haha. Thank you, sect leader. Ling Xiao nodded slightly and put the divine ancient sword into his bag. Then he sat in the carriage and headed to the Thunder Volcano in the northwest of the Tianyan territory. Everyone, fortune has appeared in the world, and the fated ones will get it. Follow me, young master, righteous. The group of heavenly talents from the Tianyan realm immediately bowed and followed Ling Xiao. Amidst the crowd, Zhang Jiuji looked surprised and nodded silently. He was indeed the young master of the Ling people, the human emperor. His magnanimity was really awe-inspiring. Of course, Zhang Jiuji was also pondering at this moment. Although Ling Xiao's actions were righteous, wasn't he overly confident? Perhaps, in the eyes of this young master, they, the so-called geniuses of the same generation, were not even qualified to compete with him. As he thought like this, Zhang Jiuji's eyes were instantly suffused with a strand of battle intent. This fortune had been delivered right to his face, so how could he not seize it? Non-extremities. Be careful. I have a feeling that this young man is not simple. Within the 9 Suns Buddha sword, Inu softly reminded with a grave tone. With her cultivation base, Huiyan and the other Sage Realm experts couldn't detect her existence at all. Although Ling Xiao's gaze only lingered on Zhang Jiuji for an instant, Inu seemed to feel that this young man seemed to have noticed something. There was a slight fluctuation in his emotions. Of course it's not simple. Zhang Jiuji grinned. There was no fear in his eyes. He is the most respected genius of the current generation in the Azure world. From Lei Yun and Great Elder Sanyan's attitude, he already understood what the words Taigu Ling people meant. Originally, he thought that with such a background, Ling Xiao would definitely be an arrogant and despotic person. However, he didn't expect to be so surprised when he saw him today. This young master of the Ling people was not only gentle and beautiful, but also a generous and dignified person. From his body, Zhang Jiuji could see some of the arrogance that belonged to top geniuses. His celestial aura overlapped, and his Tao was natural. Unfortunately, this young master of the Ling people didn't seem to be one of the 13 taboos of the current generation that his master had mentioned. As such, to Zhang Jiuji, it wasn't much of a shock. However, just as Zhang Jiuji was muttering to himself, he saw the young man in black suddenly turn his head and look at him in the distance. There was a gentle smile at the corner of his mouth, giving off a feeling of a spring breeze. For a moment, Zhang Jiuji felt a chill in his heart. Impossible. Yin was a second-grade, earthly sovereign. Even sect master Huiyin and the others didn't notice her existence. So how could this young man have a clue? Senior Yin, from now on, without my permission, don't release a wisp of aura for the time being. To be safe, Zhang Jiuji reminded her softly to avoid any unforeseen circumstances. I got it. At this moment, Ling Zhao's gaze only paused on Zhang Jiuji for a moment before he looked at the sky again. However, there seemed to be a smile at the corner of his mouth. For a moment, he could feel a trace of gloomy aura from Zhang Jiuji's body. Obviously, as he had guessed, this young man had some hidden good fortune on him. Legend had it that the Buter Abyss was a place where demons lurked. In the past tens of thousands of years, countless creatures had fallen in there, but this chosen one had walked out unscathed. The good fortune Saint Physique's uniqueness lay in the word fortune. Wherever it went, misfortune would turn into blessings. The more dangerous a place was, the more likely it was to hide some terrifying good fortune. And these good fortunes were mostly prepared for the chosen one. It was likely that the treasure in the Buter Abyss had already fallen into Zhang Jiuji's hands. According to the rumors, this treasure was likely to be an evil treasure. Interesting, it seemed that the plan could proceed smoothly. Buzz. It was only when Ling Zhao's figure descended from the sky and landed in front of a pitch-black ancient mountain that a look of excitement appeared on the faces of the prodigies. A mystic realm that could attract Master Ling Zhao to personally come must contain some extremely terrifying secret. Even with their cultivation levels, they would most likely not be able to obtain the treasure. However, to be able to follow Master Ling Zhao and drink some soup was also a waste. Everyone, according to the ancient map, the treasure is in this mountain range. However, whether you can find it or not depends on your luck. Ling Zhao held an ancient sheepskin scroll in his hand and nodded seriously. That's right, it should be here. Thunder Volcano. Just from the name alone, one could tell that this mountain contained the power of thunder and fire. It was said that tens of thousands of years ago, a bolt of heavenly thunder had descended here, causing heavenly fire to burn the mountain. It burned for a full 900 years, burning the entire mountain to its current pitch-black and terrifying appearance. Back then, the Sacred Fire sect had also sent experts into the mountain to search for the treasure, but in the end, they found nothing. However, since Master Ling Zhao said that there was a treasure in the mountain, it could only mean that the Sacred Fire sect was blind and did not have the luck to obtain the treasure. Let's go. Ling Zhao kept the dragon carriage and took the lead in walking towards the mountain. Beside him, Xinyuan Weiyang and Lin Meng also stepped out and followed closely behind. Seeing this, the prodigies from the Tianyin domain, who were still hesitating, immediately turned into flowing light and rushed in all directions. Only Zhang Jiuji seemed to be pondering. In the end, he actually followed Ling Zhao from afar and entered the strange rocks in the mountain. Instantly, the entire thunder volcano was filled with the sound of wind, and countless flowing light shone in the sky. Ling Zhao looked at the map as he went deeper into the ancient mountain. He did not stop for even a moment along the way. As expected, young Master Ling people has a purpose. He should know the exact location of the mystic realm. Zhang Jiuji's eyes were deep, but there was a faint smile on his face. At this moment, he did not dare to get too close to Ling Zhao, for fear that the young master of the Ling people would sense his aura. The path to immortality was cruel, and everyone was fighting to pass it. Moreover, killing people for treasures was the will of heaven, and it did not affect one's Tao heart. Although Zhang Jioji was not afraid of Ling Xiao, with his identity, he must have many treasures in his hands. Therefore, unless it was absolutely necessary, it was better not to go against him. Chapter 1141. For the whole day, Ling Xiao had been wandering in the depths of Mount Ray. At this moment, he seemed to be hesitating, and his eyes were searching the valley in front of him from time to time. Zhang Jiuji, on the other hand, was standing on a mountain in the distance, carefully observing the valley under his feet. This valley was extremely neat, as if it had been smashed by a divine object. However, on one side of the valley was a pitch-black cave abode, while on the other side was a rapid waterfall that flowed downwards. Even though they were very far away, Zhang Jiuji could feel that the aura in this valley was obviously more scorching and irritable than the other places in the Thunder Volcano. Moreover, this place was not at the peak of Mount Ray, but at a secluded place at the foot of the mountain, so it was not very eye-catching. It should be here. In the end, Ling Xiao walked to the front of the cave, and his body was suddenly surrounded by spiritual light. Then, he directly led Xinyuan Weiyang and Lin Meng into the cave and disappeared. When his aura completely disappeared, Zhang Jiuji descended from the sky and stood at the entrance of the cave. He hesitated for a long time, but did not dare to rashly step in. At this moment, he did not know what was hidden in the cave, and he was not sure what the space inside was like. If he rashly entered and disturbed Ling Xiao, it might be the beginning of a disaster. Forget it. I'd better not take the risk. Zhang Jiuji sighed and turned to look at the direction of the waterfall. For some reason, he had a faint intuition that there seemed to be another world behind the waterfall. There seemed to be a faint trace of the power of thunder flowing in it, but it was hidden by the rapid flow of the waterfall. Could it be that the real fortune is behind this waterfall? Zhang Jiuji frowned slightly and walked to the front of the waterfall. In the next moment, an ancient sword suddenly appeared in his hand, and he slashed at the waterfall. Boom! The roar resounded, and it was quickly extinguished. Zhang Jiuji's face almost instantly froze, and his eyes seemed to be flickering with excitement. At this moment, he seemed to see that behind the waterfall, there was a pitch-black cave entrance. The cave entrance was extremely small, and it was dark and narrow. It was surrounded by two rocks, and there was only a thin and long gap. There seemed to be water flowing out of the cave, and it was very mysterious. There really is something here. Zhang Jiuji turned his head and glanced at the surrounding space. When he was certain that no one was paying attention to him, he plunged into the black hole. Boom! At first, the cave stone path was damp and narrow, winding and secluded. After walking for several li, it suddenly opened up. A wisp of spiritual light silently blossomed from within the cave. Like a barrier, it stopped Zhang Jiuji in his tracks. This is... Zhang Jiuji frowned and swung his ancient sword again. A terrifying aura began to recover. On the Buddha's sword, a great sun sank in the west and fell with a loud rumble. The entire cave trembled for a moment, and then the barrier shattered like an ice crystal. Immediately after, an extremely violent energy of lightning poured down and almost knocked Zhang Jiuji to the ground. Damn it! What a terrifying lightning power! Zhang Jiuji's eyes narrowed slightly. The ancient sword in his hand blocked in front of him, emanating a myriad of rays of divine light. As for the lightning energy that was swimming in the air, it suddenly froze for an instant. After that, in an inconceivable manner, it actually fell to the ground and turned into flowing lightning liquid. Just looking at the pitch-black sticky color was enough to make one's heart tremble. Only now did Zhang Jiuji see that in the depths of the ancient cave, a ball of pitch-black lightning was jumping and buzzing, as if it was facing a great enemy. It should be a divine lightning of heaven and earth that is being nurtured here. As expected of the good fortune saint body, you can even encounter such a divine object. Yinyu's voice came from Zhang Jiuji's soul sea, and the latter's face immediately surged with excitement. divine lightning of heaven and earth. This divine object was no different from the spiritual fire of heaven and earth. It was where the real fortune was. He didn't expect that he would find such a divine object when he saw a black hole and wanted to enter it to explore its mysteries. The fortune is with me. Senior, how can I take away this divine lightning? Now that Ling Xiao was in the valley, if he made too much noise, it would inevitably attract covetous eyes. If it was an ordinary fortune, the young master of the Ling people would not care about it. However, once the divine lightning of heaven and earth was integrated into one's body, it would have a qualitative improvement to one's physical strength. If you have a high-grade sacred artifact, maybe I can try to capture it. Inyu's figure appeared out of thin air and waved her hand to seal the entrance of the cave. She had an evil body and had lost her physical body. This lightning was her nemesis. High-grade sacred artifact? Senior, you think too highly of me. Zhang Jiuji shook his head and smiled bitterly. Not to mention a high-grade sacred artifact. The only spirit treasure he could take out was the Nine Sons Buddha. Different from the human race, the real foundation of the monster race was the talent of the physical body. Sacred artifacts and spirit treasures were rare. Moreover, his master had always been indifferent and had never given him a decent treasure. However, this ancient sword could seal Inyu. Maybe don't look at me. My soul body is afraid of things with extreme yang. This divine lightning is terrifying. Once it is sealed in the sword, I'm afraid I will be gone. Inyu shook her head and turned to look at the entrance of the cave. It seems that the only way now is for you to integrate it. What? Zhang Jiuji's eyes trembled. In a flash, he understood Inyu's intention. His good fortune saint body was the peak of the nine heavens and was comparable to a sacred artifact. It was suitable for him to integrate the divine lightning. However, Ling Zhao's hesitation just now showed that he had noticed the strangeness of the waterfall. Once he came out of the cave, he would probably investigate this place. Don't hesitate. If you miss this opportunity, you will regret it. I will seal this place. You should integrate the divine lightning as soon as possible. Even if someone breaks in, I will help you escape. Remember, on the path of immortality, only by being strong can you be truly powerful. Inyu's tone was profound. Now, she and Zhang Jiuji were born as one. The stronger this young man was, the more powerful blood spirits she would have the opportunity to devour and extend her life in order to reappear in this world. Okay, I will do as you say. Hearing this, Zhang Jiuji clenched his teeth. Without any hesitation, he stepped in front of the dark lightning. Suddenly, an extremely bright light bloomed around him. Buzz! Heaven and earth shone together. A great sun and a silver moon reflected each other's brilliance, standing above the cave. In Zhang Jiuji's hand, the Nine Suns Pagoda emitted a dazzling evil light. The pagoda domain was displayed and instantly wrapped around the lightning. The terrifying power of the lightning instantly surged, but there was no trace of fear on the young man's face. He stretched out his hands and suppressed the lightning. Calm your mind. Wrap the lightning with your soul power and integrate it with your spiritual power. Don't worry, you can control the Nine Suns Pagoda, so this divine lightning is naturally nothing. Behind him, Inyu said coldly. Demonic light also fluctuated around her body, enveloping the world and concealing all movements. Chapter 1142. Above the valley, the void rippled. A black-clothed figure appeared. There was not the slightest ripple on her delicate and cold face. Bai Ling looked at the waterfall coldly, and the corners of her mouth seemed to curl up. The creation behind the waterfall was naturally prepared for Zhang Jiuji according to Ling Zhao's instructions. Although Bai Ling did not know why Ling Xiao would give such a powerful godly item to a stranger for no reason, Ling Xiao had no idea why. However, since brother did so, he must have his reasons. With this thought, Bai Ling's figure hid in the void again, and she quietly guarded the entire valley. All the geniuses who broke into this place felt an inexplicable chill on their necks, and then they completely lost consciousness. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. At this time, Ling Zhao's figure had already walked out of the cave, and he looked at the waterfall in front of him calmly. Lin Meng and Xianyuan Weiyang stood beside him, and their pretty faces flickered with a touch of doubt. Although the cave was long and deep, there was no creation in it. However, not only was the young master not annoyed, but he was also quite relaxed. "Young master, is there anything strange about this waterfall?" Xianyuan Weiyang blinked her eyes and frowned slightly. With her cultivation level, it was difficult for her to find a clue under the cover of second-grade, earthly sovereign's divine soul. However, according to Bai Ling, Zhang Juji had been in there for almost 2 days. Therefore, if he did not investigate further, it would be too deliberate. That's right. This waterfall contains a very faint trace of thunder power. Since there is no creation in the cave, I'm afraid the real creation is behind this waterfall. Ling Xiao smiled faintly, stretched out 2 fingers, and gently chopped down in front of him. Suddenly, there was a sudden sound of a sword whistling through thousands of miles. A ray of clear light suddenly appeared, and with the momentum to cut through the void, it pierced through the firmament and brazenly chopped down toward the waterfall. Hearing the commotion coming from here, the entire thunder volcano immediately shot up into the sky, standing tall in the void and looking over. At this time, the originally rapid waterfall quietly stopped. Then, the entire mountain peak was neatly split apart from the middle and fell to the side. A winding path suddenly appeared, leading to a spacious and obscure cave. Inside the cave, Zhang Juji's body glowed with a dark light. He was like a great demon that had appeared in the world, instantly attracting everyone's attention. Pucci, with Zhang Juji's good fortune same body, he would have needed another day to completely fuse with the nether tribulation divine thunder. But it just so happened that he was interrupted by Ling Xiao at the critical moment, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood, and even the aura around him seemed to have withered slightly. He raised his head and looked angrily at the sky. In the next moment, his eyes suddenly focused. At this moment, he was able to see that numerous figures were densely packed in the sky, and they covered the heavens and the earth. Moreover, their gazes towards him contained a strand of shock and hatred. "Devil, how dare you, wretch? How dare you hide here? Fellow Taoists, I propose that we kill him." Zhang Juji forced himself to calm down, suppressing all the lightning energy within his body. He held the ancient sword in his hand horizontally as he carefully looked at everyone. With his current cultivation, if he didn't borrow the power of the Yin Moon, he wouldn't be able to compete with these thousands of disciples. But once the Yin Moon was exposed, it seemed that he would be completely recognized as a devil. Should he explain to them that the light emitted from his body wasn't a devil's brilliance, but the greatest fortune here, a divine thunder of heaven and earth? But it seemed that it was still a dead end. Not to mention whether Master Ling Xiao would hold a grudge against him. Because of this, a spiritual treasure of heaven and earth was enough to attract the true greed of the world. It seemed that he was definitely going to die. Not good. Why is my junior brother gone? My cousin seems to have gone missing too. Damn it. Could it be that they were all killed by this devil? Beep. The Chosen One's Tao heart is filled with anger and anger. Congratulations to the host for plundering 2,000 luck points and 20,000 villain points. It's you? Just as the Sky Prides were filled with righteous indignation and were about to kill Zhang Juji with their numinous treasures, Ling Zhao's voice suddenly rang out. At this time, there seemed to be a flicker of doubt on his face, and there was obvious disappointment in his deep, dark eyes. Everyone, I've been in this valley all this time, but I didn't feel any trace of fighting. Ling Zhao's indifferent words caused everyone to be stunned. They then silently extinguished the spiritual radiance around them. With young master's words, the youth in linen clothes' life was saved today. Also, I felt that the aura on this fellow cultivator's body wasn't evil. Instead, it had a kind of extreme yang intent. Young master is wise, now that young master mentioned it. I also felt that the aura didn't seem to be a devil's intent. That's right. Thank young master for reminding us in time. Otherwise, we would all be in big trouble today. Which dog was the one who led us astray just now? Damn it. Aren't you afraid that someone will take you out one day and kill your whole family? When he heard everyone's words, Ling Xiao immediately waved his hand to signal for them to be quiet. Then he said with a solemn expression, I know that the sky demon has descended and everyone in the Azure domain is in a state of panic. However, we cultivators must not panic because of this. We must not wrong a good person and let an evil demon go. Young master, righteousness, as expected of the Lord Ling Xiao. Such a character is worthy of our respect and learning. All right, in less than a month, it will be the day of the Tao Heaven Mansion Master's Lecture. Everyone, let's meet again if fate wills it. After he finished speaking, Ling Xiao no longer hesitated. He stepped forward, and the Jade Chariot appeared under him, and he headed toward the center of the Tianyan region. Now that this little extreme had entered the picture, there were still 4 senior sisters before he could cut it off. There was no hurry for now. Seeing this scene, everyone was stunned. Young master is leaving just like that? Could it be that the young master had already obtained the fortune in the Thunder Volcano? It shouldn't be. Judging from the way the young master cut the barren mountain with his sword just now, it was obvious that he was looking for something. Suddenly, everyone's eyes trembled, and they seemed to have a guess in their hearts. Could it be that the glow on the youth in linen clothes just now was the fortune that Master Ling Xiao was looking for? Extreme yang and extreme strength. That was the power of thunder. Inexplicably, the eyes of many demons seemed to be suffused with scarlet light, and their eyes were filled with greed when they looked at Zhang Jiuji. The corners of Zhang Jiuji's eyes trembled slightly. He didn't dare to hesitate at all, and he immediately turned around and rushed into the distance. Although, just now, Master Ling Xiao had clearly said that innocent people were not to be killed indiscriminately. However, at this time, several figures still chased after Zhang Jiuji. How could the fortune that could make Master Ling Xiao come in person fall into the hands of a mountain youth so easily? Look at the way he's dressed. He's obviously trash with no background. As long as he is clean, no one will care if he is killed. Jiuji, go to the east. There is a Saint Stage great demon there. I will find a way to conceal your aura and let these people die by themselves. Yinyu's voice came from the Sea of Soul, and a sinister smile appeared on Zhang Jiuji's face. Chapter 1143. In the eastern part of the Tianyan region, the ancient forest had turned into a sea. Zhang Jiuji was hiding in the branches of an ancient tree, coldly looking at the demonic aura in the distant forest. Following a series of screams, the dozen or so sky prides who had been chasing after him were instantly devoured by the saint-level demonic beast on the spot. Phew! Zhang Jiuji heaved a sigh of relief and frowned as he looked at his Danci. Just now, he had been interrupted at the crucial moment of fusing with the divine thunder, causing the fusion to be incomplete. At this moment, he could feel an extremely violent force corroding his meridians and Danci. If he did not handle it properly, he might very well fall into a demon. However, when he thought of what Ling Xiao had said and done just now, some of the prejudice in his heart dissipated. He could see a trace of disappointment in Ling Xiao's eyes. He had probably guessed that the creation in this valley had fallen into his hands. Even if the Sky Prides had beaten him to death just now, no one would have blamed Ling Xiao for the crime. All he had to do was wait quietly, and he would be able to take back the creation of the divine thunder. Zhang Jiuji did not believe that the young master of the Ling people had come all the way here without knowing what he was looking for. However, he had not done so. Instead, he had taken the initiative to help him resolve the crisis. Although the feeling of being protected was very uncomfortable, Zhang Jiuji had to admit that at this moment, he had some recognition of Ling Xiao's character. The young master of the ancient clan was neither arrogant nor rash. He had a righteous heart. On the path to immortality, Any young man with a background would be 70% arrogant and 30% domineering. However, the second generation of the largest clan in the Qingtsang region was so humble and humble. Now that Zhang Jiuji had appeared in the world, he had not shown off at all, nor did he have a holy name. In front of the colossus that was the Taigu Ling people, it would not be an exaggeration to say that he was an ant. However, just as the Lord Ling Xiao had said, he could not kill the innocent. He was a righteous young man who truly cared about the common people in his heart. He also fully understood that all lives were equal, and there was no distinction between nobility and lowliness. At this moment, even Zhang Jiuji couldn't help but want to shout, "The Lord Ling Xiao is unparalleled in this world." It seems that Song Ning might have really colluded with the demons. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been reduced to such a state. Zhang Jiuji shook his head and sighed. Based on his understanding of Song Ning, this young master of the Sirius clan had always been overbearing and tyrannical. For the sake of good fortune, he had no qualms. It was not impossible for him to side with the evil demons. At the very least, after witnessing Ling Zhao's character, he was more willing to trust the young master of the human clan who had just saved his life. "Jiuji, you must suppress the divine lightning in your body as soon as possible. Otherwise, it will damage your meridians." Yin Yu's voice rang out. Zhang Jiuji nodded and turned to head north. Given fifth senior sister's temper, she must be completely anxious now that they had been delayed for another 3 days. Unfortunately, the two of them had parted in a hurry, so they didn't leave behind any message tokens. As such, he could only hurry to the sky of Dao City and find a way to suppress the divine lightning in his body. Beep. The Chosen One is grateful to the demon and acknowledges the sky demon's character. The courting of death has begun. Congratulations to the host for plundering 1,000 luck points and 10,000 villain points. Thousands of miles away, Ling Xiao sat in the jade carriage. When he heard the system's notification, he smiled gently. "Young master, what are you so happy about? Didn't you not find the good fortune?" Xinyuan Weiyong rested his chin on his hands and tilted his head. He looked at Ling Xiao in surprise. "The good fortune of heaven and earth belongs to those who are fated to obtain it. If I don't find it, it will not be mine." Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. He lowered his head and looked at the ancient mountain that pierced through the clouds below. The ancient mountain was shrouded in mist and was full of spiritual energy. There was a red glow that stretched for thousands of miles, like the divine light of the sunset, connecting heaven and earth. Vaguely, there was a kind of elixir fragrance that made one feel refreshed and intoxicated. There were layers of golden palaces on the mountain. Figures with powerful auras stepped down from the sky and landed on the mountain peak, causing a burst of laughter. Ling Xiao smiled and turned to look at Lin Meng. However, at that moment, the Chosen One's eyes were filled with reluctance. She pursed her red lips, but didn't dare to say anything. "Let's go." Ling Xiao drove the dragon carriage and landed from the sky, instantly attracting countless gazes. However, the people on the Sacred Fire Mountain today were all leaders of famous forces in the Tianyan region. At this moment, a wisp of surprise and anger appeared on many people's faces when they saw someone actually control the chariot to the ground. Moreover, the person sitting in the carriage seemed to be a young man, holding two beautiful women in his arms. Damn, arrogant and shameless. Who is this dandy from? How dare he come to the Tianyan region? Just as everyone was guessing how the Sacred Fire sect master, Huiyin, would deal with such an arrogant and rude junior, they saw Huiyin, who was originally sitting upright and still in front of the Great Hall, suddenly stand up and take a step forward, heading straight for the dragon carriage. Take a guess. Do you think there will be blood at the ceremony of the young master of the Sacred Fire sect today? It's hard to say. With old Hua's character, he will most likely kill such an arrogant junior with one slap. Look at his anxious face. That young man is going to be unlucky. The leaders of the two sects chatted softly. However, the moment they finished speaking, many leaders of the surrounding forces stood up and walked toward the young man. Suddenly, A chill seemed to rise from the bottom of their hearts. In particular, the leaders of the surrounding sects looked at them as if they were looking at two fools. Ha 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 ha! Master Ling Xiao, we are honored by your presence. Your presence brings light to our humble dwelling. Hui Yin smiled brightly and led a group of experts from the Tianyan region to bow to Ling Xiao. The two leaders of the small sects had not yet stood up, but their lower bodies were already wet. That young man was Master Ling Xiao. In the past few days, they had heard that a big shot had come to the Tianyan region. He was the young master of the Taigu Ling people. But they really did not expect that the young master would appear so abruptly, giving people a kind of unreal feeling. What was wrong with the young master holding two beautiful women? Was this shameless? This was obviously universal love. On the square, Ling Xiao walked out of the jade carriage and looked at the two leaders of the small sect who were sitting in their original places with a gentle smile. Their Taoist hearts, which were on the verge of collapse, were finally completely shattered when Hui Yin and the others looked at them. Pucci. At this moment, in the eyes of the crowd, they seemed to see the true meaning of reincarnation. Young master, please. Hui Yin coldly snorted and gave the two of them a deep look. Only then did he turn his head and welcome Ling Xiao to the front of the hall with a smile on his face. As for him, he sat at the bottom and looked at Lin Ming with some surprise in his eyes. He did not know if it was an illusion, but at this moment, he felt a trace of an extremely familiar aura fluctuation from this young girl. Moreover, this fluctuation made him, a Saint Realm expert, feel a little scared. Master Ling Xiao. He was indeed mysterious and unpredictable. Even a maidservant beside him was a person chosen by the heavens. Young master, please taste the elixirs refined by the Sacred Fire sect. My disciple has come out of seclusion today, and the ceremony will begin soon. It's okay. Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. He picked up a jade white elixir on the table and suddenly thought of something. He turned to look at Hui Yin and said, "The disciple that sect leader who mentioned is called Cheng Feng, right?" "That's right. My disciple, Cheng Feng, is the most talented person in the Sacred Fire sect in the past 10,000 years. I didn't expect you to know him." Hui Yin was stunned and inexplicably surprised. "Oh, then it can't be wrong." Chapter 1144. I can't be wrong. Hui Yan's mouth trembled, but he hesitated when he saw that Ling Xiao had already turned his head away from him. Why does Master Ling Xiao sound so unfriendly? However, since Ling Xiao didn't say anything, he didn't dare to ask further lest he upset the young master. It's only been half a year since the young master of the Ling people was born. Feng hadn't left the mountain to train at all during this half a year, so theoretically, the two of them shouldn't have any interactions, let alone hatred. Maybe I'm thinking too much. Hui Yin forced himself to calm down, but there was still a hint of worry in his eyes. Buzz! Suddenly, a buzzing sound came from the depths of the mountain in the distance, and a bright and deep flame swept through the world. The scorching waves surged like a tide, like the sea of stars, enveloping all directions and giving off an extremely terrifying and oppressive feeling. Under the raging flames, a blue-clothed figure stepped through the air. When his feet landed, the shadow of a flame lotus evolved on its own, looking quite magical. At this moment, Ling Xiao could see that there was a dark blue flame lingering on the young man's body. The power contained within was almost the same as the two spiritual fires that he had fused with. It was obvious that this flame should be the one that Elder Ling wanted to fuse with back then. However, in the end, he was betrayed by his disciple and almost died. He escaped with his remnant soul, and by chance, he hid it in his ring and was picked up by Lin Shi. Of course, without Ling Xiao, with Lin Shi's luck, he might be able to break through the shackles of the lower realm 30 years later and come to the Sacred Fire Mountain to uncover the secret. However, Elder Ling, 30 years is too long. I, Ling Xiao, am seizing every moment. Feng. Hui Yan's expression was solemn, and there seemed to be some pride in his eyes. At this moment, he could feel that Cheng Feng's cultivation had entered the 8th level of the Venerable Realm. Although, Feng was slightly older, and he was now more than 600 years old. Compared to the true top monsters in Qing Song, his realm was not outstanding. However, one had to know that Feng Er's talent was mediocre before, and he was a complete trash. Ever since he cultivated the cultivation technique created by senior brother Lingxin and dared to be the first in the world to fuse with the spirit flame of the heavens and earth into his body, he was able to attain his current accomplishments. On the path to immortality, talent was one thing. But what was more precious than talent was one's temperament. Starting from humble beginnings, he was unyielding and kept moving forward. Even though Feng often suffered from the backlash of the spiritual fire, he never stopped cultivating. Instead, he grew through pain time and time again. In Huiyan's opinion, such a young man would one day reach the peak of the world and overlook an era. Of course, the current Cheng Feng could be said to be carrying all the hopes of the Sacred Fire sect. As long as he could safely step into the heavenly sovereign level, the Sacred Fire sect would become the true top force in Qing Song. Master, Cheng Feng descended from the sky and bowed to Huiyan and the elders of the Sacred Fire sect. Then, he looked at Ling Xiao in surprise. At this moment, he could see that this youth, whose bone frame was at most in his early 20s, seemed to be sitting in the most prominent position in the middle of the plaza. Whether it was Huiyan or the other elders, they all looked at him with reverence. Who was he? Cheng Feng was inexplicably curious, but more than that, he felt an inexplicable chill, especially the gentleness in the youth's eyes. Under the sunlight, there was no warmth at all. This is Feng. Let me introduce you. This is the young master of the Taigu Ling people, Lord Ling Xiao. A few days ago, he came to the Tianyan territory to explore the secret territory. I invited him to the Sacred Fire sect to participate in the Sacred Fire ceremony. Huiyan smiled brightly and bowed slightly to Ling Xiao. Young master, this is my disciple, Cheng Feng. Senior brother Cheng, I've heard a lot about you. Ling Xiao nodded with a smile and sized up the youth in front of him. As for Cheng Feng's information, he had already sent a shadow guard to investigate. Ling Qin's disciple, ordinary talent. It was precisely because he cultivated the blazing scripture that he had today's achievements. Master Ling Xiao, it's getting late. I think we should start. Huiyan looked at Ling Xiao and felt that the young master was looking at Feng with a playful gaze. Haha, of course. Ling Xiao nodded, picked up a cup of spirit liquid on the table, and took a sip. Everyone clang. However, just as Huiyan stood up and attracted the attention of all the sect leaders, Ling Xiao suddenly put down the cup in his hand, making a crisp sound. Oh, I suddenly remembered, sect leader Hua. Huiyan swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. The uneasiness in his heart grew stronger, but he still did not dare to be negligent. Young master? Senior brother Cheng. He wasn't your disciple before, was he? That's right. Huiyan's expression turned serious, and his eyes seemed to be filled with vicissitudes. Feng, I used to be my senior brother Ling Chen's disciple. Unfortunately, my senior brother was a genius, but he died young. Feng did not disappoint and inherited my senior brother's legacy. In my eyes, the position of Sacred Flame sect leader should belong to my senior brother. Now that I've made Feng the young master, as long as he stays true to himself, when his cultivation reaches the saint realm in 100 years, I'll pass the position of sect leader to him. Master, Cheng Feng's eyes trembled, and his expression was quite moved. The surrounding sect leaders nodded one after another, and their eyes were filled with admiration. Who said that the path of immortal Tao was full of deception? The relationship between sect leader Huiyan and his senior brother Ling Chun should be passed down through the ages and praised by the world. I see. Ling Xiao stood up and walked to Cheng Feng with a gentle smile. I heard that senior brother Cheng has merged with a heaven and earth spirit fire? That's right. Cheng Feng frowned slightly. He naturally felt the hostility in Ling Xiao's eyes. However, at this moment, he was somewhat puzzled. He and this young master did not know each other, and they had never offended each other. Why would he deliberately make things difficult for him in today's ceremony? In fact, Chung Feng was purely thinking too much. Even if today was not the ceremony for him to ascend to the position of young master, since Ling Xiao had come to the Tianyan domain, he naturally did not intend to let him go. A bastard who deceived his master and destroyed his ancestors, of course, he would let him suffer the cruelest evil in this world. What? Elder Ling was killed by me? Didn't I just want him to be reincarnated earlier? Isn't it a waste of his talent to be a wandering soul all day long? I heard that senior brother Chung has suffered serious injuries after merging with this heaven and earth spirit fire. Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. Senior brother Chung, have you thought about where the problem lies? Chung Feng's eyes narrowed slightly. He suppressed the anger in his heart and said calmly, this cultivation method was created by my master, Elder Ling, when he was alive. It has not been perfected yet, and no one dares to try it. Back then, when I was an emperor god, I merged with the heaven and earth spirit fire in order to fulfill my master's last wish. I hurt my meridians in Elixir C. However, I, Chung Feng, have a clear conscience and do not regret it. At this moment, Chung Feng was wearing a blue robe, and his face was cold and resolute. He really did look like a genius of this generation and the light of the righteous path. However, at this moment, Ling Xiao suddenly grinned, and the sarcasm in his eyes could no longer be concealed. What a clear conscience! Chapter 1145. If Elder Ling heard this, he would probably crawl out of the underworld and kill you personally. Ling Xiao's face darkened. Suddenly, a magnificent aura descended from the sky, causing the wind and clouds to change. Heaven and earth fell silent. Ling Xiao had already guessed that since Chung Feng could kill Elder Ling in the Emperor God realm, he must have taken advantage of the crucial period when Elder Ling was fusing with the spiritual fire. Moreover, according to normal circumstances, what evil intentions could the old grandpa have? It was not that he did not pass the burning scripture to this disciple on purpose. He was most likely worried that the scripture was incomplete and would lead to a calamity. It was a pity that Chung Feng's talent was ordinary. He must have been ridiculed by many people in the sect. Deep in his heart, he must have yearned for power and respect. His master's concern might have been a sign of distrust in his eyes. In the end, the master and disciple had a rift in their hearts, which led to this tragedy. What? Young master, what do you mean? The entire Saint Volcano had long since fallen silent. At this moment, all the experts in the Tianyan region were looking at the black-clothed figure in front of the hall in astonishment. Their eyes were filled with confusion. Judging from Master Ling Xiao's words, could it be that there was a hidden story behind Ling Chen's death? You have to ask Senior Brother Chung what I mean. Senior Brother Chung, have you ever thought that it was not a problem with the cultivation method, but the burning scripture that you cultivated was not complete? Ling Xiao smiled faintly. Chung Feng's face turned pale instantly. He stared blankly at Ling Xiao and saw the mockery in the young man's eyes. At this moment, he seemed to have returned to the time when he had just entered the Holy Fire sect. At that time, except for his master, almost everyone in the sect looked at him with the same attitude. Indifferent, arrogant, and disdainful. Burning scripture. How could he know the name Burning Scripture? One must know that when his master died, he was the only one by his side. Even now, everyone knew that Ling Chen had created a cultivation technique that could fuse with the spirit fire of heaven and earth to cultivate. However, after his unexpected death, no one dared to rashly try it again. If Chung Feng had not tried it himself, no one in the Holy Fire sect would have remembered this cultivation method. Even so, Chung Feng still claimed the burning scripture as his own and never taught it to anyone else, citing his master's last words. In that case, where did the young master of the Ling people learn the name of this technique? Moreover, after all these years of research, Chung Feng indeed felt that the burning scripture he cultivated was not complete. It was missing the most crucial part. However, no matter how hard he searched, he could not find the remaining remnant of the cultivation technique. With his talent, it was impossible for him to perfect this technique. Therefore, he had to endure the pain of the spiritual fire burning his body. What are you saying? I don't understand. Although Chung Feng had many doubts in his heart, his expression remained calm. Ling Chun was the most monstrous talent in the sacred fire sect in the past 100,000 years. Even now, many elders in the sacred fire sect still regarded him as their idol. Furthermore, the reason why Huiyin valued him so much was largely because he was Ling Chen's only disciple. Once the matter of him personally causing the death of his master was exposed, his fate today would not be as simple as death. It's okay if you don't understand. I'm guessing that there must be the truth in Senior Brother Cheng's soul-seized memory. Why don't I let everyone see for themselves what exactly happened back then? Ling Zhao's expression was calm, but his words caused the expressions of all the powerful cultivators in the hall to change. Everyone had their own opinions about the young master of the Ling people. He was gentle, humble, and decisive in killing. His gentleness was benevolence and loyalty to the common people, to his lovers, and to his followers. It was not to be assumed that the young master of the Ling people was not a coward. The Holy Spirit crowned Prince Ji Ying, the Shi family's monstrous talent Shi Hao Yin, and the Shao clan's young master Xiao Moi were all killed by him personally. The three of them were all monstrous talents of the Qing Song 100 and had powerful backgrounds. Even so, offending Ling Xiao was still a road to death. What? Ling Xiao, you're overbearing. Chung Feng's face turned pale. What was the difference between forcibly searching one's soul and killing? However, if Ling Xiao insisted on doing so, he knew that the Sacred Fire sect could not stop him. Young master, you can't. In the end, Huiyin took a step forward with a gloomy expression and stood in front of Ling Xiao. At this moment, the Sacred Fire sect's master was also confused and surprised. With Ling Xiao's status, there was no need for him to humiliate Chung Feng like this. If he really offended him, he could just kill him directly. No one would dare to say anything. What was the purpose of his actions today? Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly. Huiyan's face turned pale, and he bowed deeply. Young master, although I don't know how Chung Feng offended you, please rest assured that I will discipline him strictly. Master Hua, you've misunderstood. Ling Xiao sighed softly, and a solemn expression appeared on his face. To be honest, I've seen Senior Ling Chun and personally sent him into the samsara. What? In an instant, the Sacred Fire sect was in an uproar. All the disciples and elders looked at Ling Xiao in disbelief. They were obviously shocked by what he had just said. In particular, Chung Feng's legs trembled and he almost fell to the ground. When Ling Chun died, his body was burned by the spiritual fire. However, before he died, he swore that he would regret what he had done today. Originally, Chung Feng thought that it was his resentment before he died. He did not expect that today his words would come true. You said you've seen Senior Ling Chun and killed him with your own hands? Hua Yin swallowed hard and looked at Ling Xiao in a daze. Young master, should I say that you're domineering or honest? That's right. When I first met Elder Ling, he was only left with a wisp of his remnant soul. He was hiding in a spiritual treasure and was in a miserable state. Ling Xiao sighed. His eyes were solemn and filled with vicissitudes of life. He gave off a sorrowful feeling. At that time, I didn't understand what was supporting him to prolong his feeble existence like an animal until he told me about his experience. What? Senior Ling Chun, what did he say? Huiyan's face was filled with anger. If Senior Brother Ling Chen's death was really related to something else, then there was no need for anyone else to make a move. He would kill Chung Feng with a single palm strike. He said that he died miserably because he was betrayed by his disciple. He was unwilling to accept it. Now, he was only alive because someone could inherit his unique skill and avenge him one day. Ling Xiao was not making this up. Elder Ling chose Lin Shi because he liked the young man's character. The master and disciple were supposed to work together and walk a good path. However, because they met Ling Xiao, they became suspicious of each other and went to the netherworld together. What? This? Chung Feng, what the hell is going on? Huiyan's face was gloomy. He turned to Chung Feng and shouted angrily, "Master, don't listen to his nonsense. Master Ling Chun is my benefactor. How could I harm him?" Chung Feng's tone was panicked and his mind was in a mess. Haha, I knew you wouldn't admit it, Meng. Chapter 1146. Young Master. Lin Meng, who was dressed in a red robe, walked to Ling Zhao's side with light steps. When I met Elder Ling's remnant soul, he knelt at my feet and begged me to accept his inheritance. However, I rejected him. Ling Zhao looked up at the sky. His eyes were filled with vicissitudes. I knew that once I accepted his inheritance, I would have to shoulder the responsibility of revitalizing the Sacred Fire sect. Unfortunately, my identity was special, and I could not fulfill his dream. Therefore, I accompanied him and found a new disciple. As a reward, Elder Ling gave me the blazing scripture. What, young master, is righteous? Hearing this, the Sacred Fire sect's elders were in awe. Who in the world could reject the inheritance of an alchemy fire genius? Moreover, this genius had already passed away. Only a remnant soul was left. Even if Ling Zhao snatched the inheritance, no one would know. However, our righteous Lord Ling Zhao did not take advantage of the situation. Instead, he helped senior brother Ling Chun find a new disciple. This kindness could be said to be a new lease on life for the Sacred Fire sect. Lord Ling Zhao, you are so righteous. Unknowingly, many Sacred Fire sect's elders' faces were filled with tears. It turned out that there was such a righteous person in the world. This lady is called Lin Meng. She is Elder Ling's successor. In his eyes, she is also the opportunity to revitalize the Sacred Fire sect. Ling Zhao nodded at Lin Meng, and the latter immediately understood. She stretched out her hand, and a wisp of red flame immediately bloomed. The terrifying heat almost burned the surrounding space into nothingness. This is a heaven and earth spirit fire. This young lady's body has also merged with a heaven and earth spirit fire. Instantly, the entire Sacred Fire sect went crazy. In this world, there were people who could merge with a heaven and earth spirit fire. However, those people were all giants with supreme cultivation. They used their own spiritual energy to suppress the power of the heaven and earth spirit fire. That was why they could control the extreme heat in this world. But how old was Lin Meng? Based on her physique, she was only a little over 20 years old, yet she was already an expert at the Exalt realm. Moreover, she had even merged with a spirit flame of the heavens and the earth. Such accomplishments could be said to be unprecedented. Comparing the two, Chung Feng seemed to be trash. Chung Feng shuddered when he saw the disdain in the eyes of the elders and disciples around him. It was back. Everything was back. This familiar feeling of being looked down upon. Although the blazing scripture created by Master Ling Chun can fuse with the spiritual fire, it doesn't mean that only the blazing scripture can fuse with the spiritual fire. If anyone who can fuse with the spiritual fire can become the young master of my Sacred Fire sect, my Sacred Fire sect will probably be very lively in the future. Chung Feng snorted coldly. At this point, he could only resort to sophistry and gamble with the future of his sect in order to save his life. Oh, then tell me, how can we prove that Meng is cultivating the complete burning scripture? Ling Zhao smiled. To him, Chung Feng could be killed with a wave of his hand. But today, he came to the Sacred Fire sect not only to kill people, but also to push Lin Meng to the position of young master. As such, once she becomes a saint, this house will completely fall into the hands of Ling Zhao. The cultivation method created by my master can not only fuse with the spiritual fire of heaven and earth, but also fuse multiple spiritual fires into one's body to increase one's cultivation. She only has one spiritual fire in her body. How can we prove that she has cultivated the blazing scripture? At this point, Chung Feng thought that even if Lin Meng was cultivating the blazing scripture, the spiritual fire of heaven and earth was a treasure of heaven and earth. He had been secretly searching for it all these years, but could not find any trace of it. As long as he could drive away the young master of the Ling people today, he would leave the sacred fire sect tomorrow with the excuse of going down the mountain to gain experience. At that time, there would be no need to worry about not having a foothold in this vast world. Oh, that's easy. Ling Xiao smiled warmly and fixed his gaze on Cheng Feng. Easy? Suddenly, Cheng Feng felt a chill rising from the bottom of his feet. He looked at Ling Xiao in shock. What are you trying to do? What do you think? Ling Xiao suddenly pressed out his palm. Vast divine power began to fluctuate, as if the power of heaven was crashing down on Cheng Feng. Cheng Feng's face instantly turned pale. Emerald blue flames swept out from his body, burning the sky and destroying everything. There seemed to be the sound of waves. The entire void surged like the sun, and the galaxy fell. The extreme star sea flame was the spiritual fire of heaven and earth that Elderling had found in the deep sea. This fire was extremely mysterious. Not only did it contain the heat of fire, but it also contained the vast divine power of the Sea of Stars. Now that Cheng Feng had used all his strength, even Hui Yin and the others were stunned. Ling Xiao's talent was unique in the world. However, he was only a young man in his early 20s. No matter how strong his cultivation was, how could he compare to Cheng Feng, who had cultivated for 600 years? Therefore, Ling Xiao's figure was swallowed by the flames in an instant. Oh no! Protect Lord Ling Xiao! Hui Yin frowned, although Ling Xiao's actions just now were indeed a little unreasonable. However, if the young master of the Ling clan were to hurt even a hair on his sacred fire sect today, his sect would be completely destroyed in a short while. However, just as Hua Yan's figure soared into the sky and was about to enter the sea to save Cheng Feng, an extreme aura of the great Tao suddenly surged in the layers of flames. Buzz! A lightning palm print appeared in the sky and smashed down with a force that could suppress eternity. At this moment, even the many saints present felt that time and space were slightly distorted. In the cracks in space, countless strange phenomena began to rise and evolve. The primordial world changed, heaven and earth turned upside down, and the universe was no longer there. A tall and slender figure finally slowly walked out from the depths of the spiritual fire. Along the way, the spiritual fire in the sky took the initiative to retreat to the side as if it had met a terrifying monarch. It faintly revealed a desire to submit. Boom! The lightning palm fell from the sky and crushed Cheng Feng's figure to the ground. Within a radius of 1,000 feet, countless cracks appeared on the bluestone plaza. Even though Cheng Feng had used the spiritual fire to form an armor at the critical moment, it was still smashed by the palm print. His flesh was shattered, and blood was everywhere. Of course, Ling Xiao did not use his full strength in the palm print just now. Otherwise, with Cheng Feng's strength, he would have been smashed to pieces. Around the square, the leaders of the various forces looked at each other. Obviously, they did not expect the young master's ceremony to develop to this point. However, Master Ling Xiao was entrusted by Ling Chun to clean up the sect. It was reasonable. Ling Xiao, I'll kill you. The lightning dispersed, and an extremely resentful voice resounded in the square. Soon after, everyone felt an extremely frightening heat stealthily sweep out. Thousands of miles of the void, the flames boiled as if a terrifying attack was secretly brewing. Ling Xiao raised his head and looked at the blue lotus shadow that destroyed the void with a gentle smile, but there was no trace of warmth in his eyes. Chapter 1147. Young Master of the Ling People, you've gone too far. A figure slowly rose into the air and stood above everyone's heads. Cheng Feng's robe was already torn apart. Even half of his bones were shattered. He glared angrily at Ling Xiao and the countless elders of the Sacred Fire sect beneath him. Why? Today was supposed to be the day he became the young master of the Sacred Fire sect. But why? Why did all of this have to be destroyed by the young master of the Ling people? Ling Chun, you old bastard. You're dead, but you still want to harm me. Why didn't you teach me the burning scripture and let me try to fuse the first spiritual fire for you? How could there be so many changes? Perhaps we would have led the Sacred Fire Sect to the top of the Sacred Fire Sect. Ha ha ha. Sacred Fire Sect, I didn't betray you. You betrayed me. So die. Chung Feng took a deep breath. His palms suddenly changed into a series of complicated hand seals. The blue starfire above his head suddenly roared and covered the sky. The starlight was dazzling. The hot and violent aura seemed to have been forcefully fused together. Even the many-saint realm experts felt frightened at this moment, as if they were on the verge of death. Ling Xiao, this is my own unique skill. I'll let you have a taste of it. Chung Feng smiled eerily and raised his palms to the sky. The spiritual fire there had already gathered into a galaxy. The Tao flowed and the rules intertwined. It was filled with a destructive aura. Suffer my wrath. Chung Feng's aura was also extremely weak. It was obvious that he had gathered all of his spiritual energy into this move. Then, as his palms pressed down, the vast river of stars suddenly poured down, gushing towards the mountaintop. It swept up the stars in the sky, containing a terrifying flame power that could destroy an entire world. Boom, boom! The world shook, and an ear-piercing buzzing sound echoed in all directions. Just a wisp of spiritual energy was enough to shatter the surrounding mountains into nothingness. The void collapsed, and terrifying gullies spread out. In an instant, the entire Sacred Fire Sect was in a state of panic. Just as Hui Yin and the other Sage Realm Elders were about to take action, they saw Ling Xiao's figure take a step forward and appear onto the galaxy. At this moment, his expression was extremely calm. His eyes were indifferent as he raised his head to look at the sea of stars that covered the sky. The attack was obviously similar to the Buddhist lotus. It suppressed the violent aura in the spiritual fire and unleashed the fire's power to the maximum. Unfortunately, Chung Feng did not have much talent. No matter how violently the sea of stars tumbled, its power was already scattered. He stretched out his finger and gently waved it toward the sky. Buzz! Between heaven and earth, the cry of a sword suddenly resounded. Expanses of Taoist rhymes coiled around Ling Xiao's body, and that strand of sword radiance was like the first ray of light in the depths of the chaos. It pierced through the heavens and the earth, pierced through the sea, and annihilated everything. Whoosh! The void shattered. At this moment, Ling Xiao's entire being was emitting an extreme light. It was as though he was a sun that was rising from the sea of stars. His black robe was peerless, and his celestial face was gentle. Endless strange phenomena appeared around the young man, as though he was the creator of the world and was about to judge the sins of the world. Rip! Before the gloominess on Chung Feng's face dissipated, he suddenly froze on the spot. The boiling sea of stars was suddenly torn apart from the middle. That beam of sword radiance, which was not considered dazzling to begin with, destroyed the blue sky with an unparalleled force. How is this possible? Chung Feng lowered his head and looked at the black-robed young man who was walking toward him step by step. At this moment, he only felt cold all over. He did not even have the courage to escape. Elder Ling said that he wanted me to clean up the sect for him. Since you are so stubborn, Ling Xiao's lips curled into a smile. Then, before Chung Feng could react, his figure had passed through space and appeared in front of him. Boom! Then Ling Xiao stretched out his hand and directly inserted it into Chung Feng's elixir sea and pulled hard. A painful scream resounded. At this moment, all the experts on the Sacred Fire Mountain were shocked to see the icy blue flame in Ling Xiao's hand, and the blood that kept dripping from between his fingers. The world was silent, and there was no sound. Ling Xiao lowered his head and looked at Lin Ming, who was in front of the crowd. He waved his hand and threw the starry extreme flame to her. Since some people don't believe me, you can fuse with this flame in front of everyone and prove your identity. Yes, young master. Lin Ming nodded slightly, and there was not a trace of emotion on her face. She was no longer the cowardly girl from the lower realm. She was humble only to her young master. Senior brother Chung, bear with it. When Ming, fuses with the spiritual flames, I will send you to the Western Paradise. Ling Zhao's tone was calm, but the coldness in his words made Hui Yin and the others' expressions change. However, at this moment, everyone was curious. Could a girl in the venerable realm really fuse two spiritual flames into her body? Ling Qin's attainment in the Tao of Fire was indeed unique. Others might not know, but as his junior brother, Hui Yin had long known that he was studying a kind of cultivation method. He used the ancient scripture as a contract to fuse the spiritual flames of heaven and earth to cultivate. However, this method was dangerous. Not to mention those in the venerable realm or the saint realm, even supreme being experts could be burned to ashes if they were not careful. Moreover, the spiritual flames of heaven and earth contained extremely violent power. Some of them even had spiritual intelligence. One could imagine the danger of fusing them into one by force. However, at this moment, Ling Xiao did not look too worried. Lin Meng's physique was special. She was a great spiritual fire body, and she was born with an affinity for fire. Before she cultivated the blazing scripture, she could fuse a spiritual flame into her body. Now that she had entered the venerable realm, fusing with the starry extreme flame was naturally not a problem. Time passed slowly. When the two colors around the girl began to fuse, the entire sacred fire sect suddenly burst into an uproar. At this moment, the scarlet and icy blue colors merged into one and turned into a faint purple color. Lin Meng's aura suddenly rose at this moment. She actually succeeded. God bless our sacred fire sect. Countless elders were shocked, and a look of ecstasy unconsciously appeared on their faces. Since Lin Meng was Ling Qin's disciple, she was also the successor of the sacred fire sect. With her talent, the sacred fire sect only needed to find her a spiritual flame of heaven and earth. Sooner or later, she would enter the supreme being level or even higher. In this way, the sacred fire sect would not be worried about its prosperity. A supreme being who had fused with several spiritual flames. Just thinking about it made people tremble. Moreover, this girl was personally brought to the sacred fire mountain by the young master of the Ling people, with a relationship with Ling Xiao. Hiss. Fortune. This was a heaven-defying fortune. How is this possible? Cheng Feng staggered and suddenly collapsed to the ground. However, at this moment, there was no trace of fear on his face. Only endless resentment was left. Ling Chun, you really looked down on me. You didn't teach me the real blazing scripture until your death. You deserve to die. Chapter 1148. Puchi. Just as Cheng Feng finished speaking, Ling Xiao suddenly stretched out his hand and smashed the head of the former young master of the sacred fire sect into pieces. Then he turned to look at Hui Yin and the others and said in a gentle tone, "Sect leader Hua, please forgive me. I hate traitors the most in my life. Previously, I promised Elder Ling that I would clean up the traitors for him and send Meng heir safely to the sacred fire sect. Now that my mission has been accomplished, if you still don't believe me, I have nothing to say. Menger, come with me. Ling people never reject evildoers." With that, Ling Xiao turned around and walked down the mountain. Master Ling Xiao. Young master, please wait. Seeing this, Hui Yin and the other experts of the sacred fire sect were shocked and quickly stopped Ling Xiao. Young master, are you kidding me? Our young master has been killed by you, and our only spiritual fire has been taken away by you. You want to leave just like that? Young master, today I have seen how righteous you are. It's funny that I thought Cheng Feng was the key to the prosperity of the sacred fire sect. Hui Yin shook his head and smiled bitterly. Young master, today is the young master ceremony of the sacred fire sect. How about this? I will take Miss Lin Meng as my personal disciple and appoint her as the young master of the sacred fire sect. What do you think? Haha, Master Hua, you are too polite. How can I, an outsider, interfere in the affairs of the sacred fire sect? Lin Meng is Elder Ling's disciple. No matter what position she has in the sacred fire sect in the future, she will always be my friend. This will never change. Ling Xiao smiled faintly. Although he mentioned this casually, the masters of the Tianyan region had engraved it in their hearts. It seemed that they had to suck up to Miss Lin in the future. Maybe one day she would be fated to be with the young master, and they could also rise to the heavens with her. Yes, yes. Young master sent Lin Ming back to the sect from afar. We should thank you for your kindness. Hui Yen laughed. With the strength of the Sacred Fire sect, it was usually difficult for them to catch the attention of the Ling people. But today, Ling Xiao had made his stance clear. Wasn't he secretly helping the Sacred Fire sect to stabilize its reputation? Although the Sacred Fire sect was one of the most powerful sects in the Tianyan domain, there were still a few sects that pretended to be obedient but opposed in secret. But now, with the relationship between Ling Xiao and Lin Ming, do you think they will rush here overnight to lick the Sacred Fire sect boots? Everyone, today is the day that our Sacred Fire sect's young master, Lin Ming, is born. To celebrate this, we must get drunk for 3 days. With a wave of Hui Yan's hand, countless disciples walked over from the edge of the square, carrying immortal spirit fruits and placing them in front of the crowd. Young lord, please. Hui Yan welcomed Ling Xiao back to the table, picked up the wine cup, and drained it in one gulp. Meanwhile, the other sect masters of the realm of Heaven Flame also took the opportunity to approach Ling Xiao and flatter him. After a banquet, everyone returned home after enjoying themselves to the fullest. On the second day, when the sky had just brightened, a golden dragon jade carriage suddenly cut across the sky and headed toward the center of the Azure Mountain. At the peak of the Sacred Fire Mountain, Lin Ming was dressed in red. She was tall and graceful. The mountain wind blew and lifted her hair, but it couldn't hide the sadness in her eyes. She never dared to disobey Ling Xiao's decision. This was because Aunt Xinyuan had once said that if she wanted to stay by his side, she had to be someone who was useful to him. Disciple, so you are here? In the ancient forest, Hui Yin walked over with a sincere smile on his face. In his opinion, Lin Ming's talent was unprecedented. Even compared to the Azure Mountain sequence, she was not inferior at all. The Sacred Fire sect only needed to hibernate for 100 years. When this woman's cultivation reached a certain level, she would definitely be able to intimidate the Azure Mountain. Disciple, a few patriarchs of the Sacred Fire sect want to see you. Master, I need the heaven and earth spirit fire. The more, the better. Lin Ming, turn around. The sadness on her pretty face had already dissipated, leaving only endless indifference. The young master had sent her here so that she could use the foundation of the Sacred Fire sect as a contract to improve her cultivation as much as possible. One day, when she was unrivaled in the Azure Mountain, she could naturally return to the young master's side. Good, good. Disciple, don't worry. I will order all the elders of the Saint Stage to go down the mountain and find the heaven and earth spirit fire for you. No, ask the patriarchs to go too. Hui Yin looked excited. The harder Lin Ming worked, the faster the Sacred Fire sect would prosper. In the end, the Sacred Fire sect would dominate the world in his hands. At the same time, in the void thousands of miles away, Ling Xiao sat on the carriage and gently swirled the jade cup in his hand. By his side, Xinyuan Weiyang stared at him with reverence, and her eyes were filled with admiration. The young master was a man who kept his promises. For the promise, he did not hesitate to travel thousands of miles to protect Miss Lin Ming. Although he was a little cruel sometimes, those people were all bad people. They were devils. What are you looking at? Ling Xiao smiled gently and raised his head to take a sip of wine. Before leaving, he took almost all of the divine wine brewed by the Sacred Fire sect. Needless to say, the Sacred Fire sect was indeed a master of both alchemy and fire. The spiritual power contained in the divine wine alone was comparable to that of an ordinary grade 4 or 5 pill. Young master, where are we going next? Xinyuan Weiyang rested her chin on her hand. Now that she was close to Ling Xiao, she was not shy at all. In fact, the young master had a very pleasant smell. It was the smell of sunshine. There is less than a month until the day of the Tao Heaven Manor Lord's lecture. Let's go back to the Ling people and rest for 2 days. It's time to set off. Ling Zhao's eyes flashed with a hint of evil. He had been preparing for this game for a long time. Whether it was Yang Yuan or Zhang Jiuji, they would both shine in this grand event of the human race. Moreover, ever since Ling Xiao saw Li Jichu, he had some guesses. Perhaps there was another son of destiny standing beside this daughter of providence. And her luck most likely came from this. The academy had always been a good place to show off. However, he did not know what kind of son of providence he would encounter this time. It was not until a buzzing sound came from his soul sea that Ling Zhao's eyes trembled. He sent a voice transmission with his divine soul. Double Shadow, what's the matter? Master, I found out. It said that Prime Qingmu lives in seclusion on an ancient mountain called the Heaven and Earth Tower. However, according to my investigation, the Heaven and Earth Tower has been sealed by a Dao technique. Even the Thunder Dragon clan lord returned a few days ago without success. An expert living in seclusion? It's fine. Leave a few secret guards to keep an eye on the mountain. Come back, Ling Xiao said indifferently, but there was a hint of a smile between his brows. The Thunder Dragon Lord must have known about Lei Yun's death, but there was no news from the demon realm. It seemed that the Thunder Dragon Lord was extremely cautious and wanted to secretly investigate the truth of the matter. However, as Lei Yun's master, Prime Qingmu chose to live in seclusion at this time. There must be some secrets that no one knew. The demon realm revered and lived in seclusion. It was very obvious that this exalted Cyan would possess an extraordinary background. But no matter what, Zhang Jiuji was already in a panic and did not dare to show his true face. This gave Ling Xiao a chance to set up a chess game. Chapter 1149. That's right. My lord, I've found out that Supreme Green Wood has taken in 6 disciples. They have all entered the world to cultivate. Lei Yun and Zhang Jiuji are going to Dao Heaven City to look for second senior sister, Hua Mingxi. Layered Shadow's voice came from his soul sea. Ling Zhao's eyes flashed with a smile. Sure enough, according to the usual routine, a Tianming like Zhang Jiuji would have several beautiful senior sisters with different backgrounds standing behind him. Lei Yun was the young mistress of the Thunder Dragon clan, one of the 10 clans in the Demon region. Her power was unparalleled in the southernmost land. Hua Mingxi was the young mistress of the Hua clan, one of the 3 great clans in the Heavenly Saint Business Alliance. It was said that this woman was gentle and kind. Not only was she very talented, but she was also very popular. Almost all the young mistresses of immortal sex and descendants of great clans had to give her some face. The Dao Heaven Palace Master's lecture was a grand occasion for Qing Song. Many geniuses would gather there. Therefore, the Heavenly Saint Business Alliance would hold the 10,000 Talents Banquet in Dao Heaven City every time. They would invite all the geniuses and hold an auction during the banquet. It seemed that the Hua clan was the host of the 10,000 Talents Banquet this time. However, according to Ling Zhao's knowledge, the 3 great clans in the Heavenly Saint Business Alliance were not as harmonious as they seemed on the surface. After all, no matter which faction it was, there would be differences after a long time. When there were differences, there would be ambitions. The bad habit of the human race was that one person could be the king and 10,000 generals would become bones. Hua Mingxi was very talented and good at managing money. She was the next candidate for the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Saint Business Alliance. However, the Hua clan could only be ranked second among the 3 great clans. Therefore, no matter how hard Hua Mingxi tried, she would only end up as a background. This gave Ling Xiao another opportunity. Temperament like water? Gentle and kind? It was impossible for a young lady who could manage the business alliance in an orderly manner to not be scheming. What businessmen cared about the most was benefits. As long as Ling Xiao could promise her enough benefits, he was not afraid that this young lady would not obey him. Of course, compared to Hua Mingxi, Ling Xiao was more willing to believe in the Lady of Destiny who had already acknowledged her allegiance. Su Yin was naturally talented in this field. Ling Xiao only needed to give her a stage, and she would definitely shine brightly. I understand. Ling Xiao picked up the jade cup and drank the immortal wine. At this moment, there seemed to be tens of thousands of demonic patterns in his eyes. Immortal splendor danced in his eyes. Not only did they not contradict each other, but they also gave off an indescribable sense of divinity. One day, he would kill until there were no immortals, no demons, and no gods in this world. I am an immortal, a devil, and a god. Buzz! In a vast blue sky, the wind and clouds rose and fell. A faint wisp of blood radiance appeared from the extreme heaven, piercing through the clouds and illuminating the 9 heavens and 10 lands. Souls return, divine fate cast, sky demon appear, 9 heavens disappear. At this moment, on the Dao Mountain, where the Daotian Academy was located, a figure in white stood with his hands behind his back, looking into the distance. It was a handsome young man with a tall and straight figure. His eyes, in particular, revealed a hint of determination and dominance. I don't believe that a sky demon can dominate all of eternity. Junior brother Lu, so you're here. Soft laughter suddenly came from the forest in the distance. Immediately after, a graceful lady walked over. Her steps were light and graceful, and her pretty face was calm. Senior sister Li. The gloominess on Lu Ming's face was swept away, and a gentle smile appeared on his face. The martial arts competition of the 4 academies is on the eve of the Academy Master's Lecture. Junior brother, how are your preparations? Li Zichu was the top disciple of the Confucian Academy and the true prodigy of the Daotian Academy. However, ever since junior brother Lu came up the mountain, she had a strange feeling in the bottom of her heart. Logically speaking, Lu Ming's cultivation level was only at the 5th grade venerable realm, the same as hers. However, every time she was in front of this junior brother, she had an inexplicable sense of oppression. It was as if junior brother Lu's true strength had long surpassed hers. He was even comparable to those sage realm elders. However, Lu Ming had never made a move all these years. Therefore, even Li Zichu was not clear about his true strength. Lu Ming's name was only left behind when he ascended the mountain ascension steps. Even the Academy Master was extremely concerned about this young disciple. Li Zichu guessed that her junior brother might shine in this martial arts competition of the 4 academies. As his name suggested, he might amaze the world with a single brilliant feat and become the top disciple of the Confucian Academy. Senior sister, don't worry. I won't tarnish the reputation of the Confucian Academy. Although Lu Ming's tone was humble, his words revealed an unparalleled dominance. At this moment, there seemed to be an immortal aura lingering around him. It was vast and everlasting, but there was also a kind of Buddha nature that could reach heaven and earth, as well as a faint sense of gloominess. This extremely mysterious power made Li Zichu frown slightly, but she did not ask further. The Daotian Academy taught everyone regardless of background. As long as one was not a demon, no matter where one was from or what one's background was, one could enter the academy to cultivate. In the words of the Daotian Academy's master, even if one had demonic thoughts after entering the academy, one's soul would be purified by the sages of the human race and be reborn. That's good. When the time comes, I'll introduce you to a gentleman. He's a very gentle gentleman. Li Zichu's eyes flickered with a trace of fascination. Even her pretty face unconsciously curled into a smile. Seeing this scene, Lu Ming frowned deeply. There seemed to be doubts in his eyes. It seemed that ever since senior sisterly returned from the supreme mystic realm, she had been looking troubled. What kind of young master was he to be able to cause her Dao heart to be bewitched? Senior sister? Although Lu Ming did not deliberately reveal his admiration for Li Zichu, the two of them had the same Dao heart and often discussed Dao and learned from each other. Moreover, Lu Ming had a dignified appearance and was extremely handsome. Li Zichu was also known as the #1 beauty of the 4 academies. Therefore, in the eyes of the disciples of the 4 academies, the two of them could be said to be a match made in heaven. In fact, there were already people who were secretly praising this pair of farts. It was not that Lu Ming did not have a trace of affection for Li Zichu in his heart. It was just that the current him was wholeheartedly pursuing Tao and had the ambition to become an immortal. He did not want to waste time on personal relationships. Junior brother, I believe that when you meet that gentleman, you will definitely be moved by his righteousness and integrity. Li Jichu smiled bitterly. There was longing in her eyes. All right, you can cultivate in peace for the next few days. I won't disturb you. With that, Li Jichu turned around and walked into the distance, leaving Lu Ming standing alone on the spot with a grave expression. At this moment, although he did not have much resentment in his heart, he was more or less disappointed and frustrated. Ever since he entered the Confucian Academy, he had been inseparable from Li Jichu. During this period, they had also gone down the mountain to gain experience. They had gone through hardships together and had a deep relationship. But now, although senior sister was still concerned about him, there was an additional politeness that she had never shown him before. This feeling was very bad. It was as if there was a layer of film that separated the two of them. Gentle and righteous gentleman, I wonder who is so lucky to be favored by senior sister. Lu Ming shook his head and smiled, his eyes shining brightly. It seemed that he had to prove himself in this martial arts competition of the 4 academies. Chapter 1150. Time passed quickly, and 10 days passed. In the center of the divine battle domain, the main hall of the divine mountain suddenly opened. A black-robed figure slowly stepped out. Golden patterns flowed on his black robe, releasing endless divine light. On that gentle face, there was a faint and clean smile. Young master, Xianyuan Weiyang and Jin Han, I've been waiting for a long time. Yao Guang stood in the distance with one hand in front of him and softly chanted a Buddhist chant. She had to admit that even though she had a grudge and cultivated a Buddhist nature, she still felt a ripple in her heart when she saw his face. It was a sin. It was a sin. Could it be that she really couldn't overcome this tribulation? Let's go. There are still a few days before the Tao Heaven Academy Master's Lecture. I'm afraid the Tao Heaven City is already bustling with noise and excitement. Ling Zhao's eyes were clear and cold. He stepped into the void, and a golden dragon divine shadow immediately floated in the air and drove the chariot over. Bodhisattva. Ling Xiao turned around and glanced at Yao Guang, only to see the latter shake his head slightly and walk towards the Tao Heaven City ahead of him. Seeing this, Ling Zhao's eyes flashed with a sinister light. After he was done with the matters of the Daotian Academy, it was time to take a stroll in the extreme lightning place. A few days ago, Wunya had already sent back news that he had successfully found the first spy that the Western Buddha Lord had placed in an ancient mountain. Next, Ling Xiao only needed to quietly wait for him to find the other two and step on the journey to the Western Paradise. No, the journey to the extreme lightning place. Then, he could crush Yao Guang's Tao heart again. However, whether this bodhisattva would die this time would depend on whether she had any value in living. She was born with a Buddhist nature and a demonic nature. Perhaps this Yao Guang's identity would have some unexpected surprises. Let's go. As Ling Xiao beckoned with his hand, Jin Han finally dared to step onto the jade chariot. She sat beside Ling Xiao and carefully moved her body until she gently leaned against his arm. Xianyuan Weiyang's beautiful brows knit together lightly when she saw this scene. She was just about to lean closer to Ling Xiao when she recalled the bowl of dragon soup from a few days ago, and her heart instantly jerked while she sat upright in a proper manner. The image of a dragon floated across the blue sky for thousands of miles. Ling Xiao, on the other hand, was leaning on the jade chariot, drinking wine and admiring the clouds. He had been looking forward to this trip for a long time, but at the same time, he was secretly on guard. After all, what he had to face was not only Yang Yuan and Zhang Jiuji, but also the Lord of Daotian Prefecture. There was no one in the entire Azure continent who didn't know this human race's saint. Although his cultivation was only at the heavenly sovereign realm, his understanding of the Tao was not something that ordinary Supreme Being experts could compare to. Some people said that the Lord of Daotian Prefecture was the reincarnation of a saint, and that he was the true destiny of the human race. Of course, Ling Xiao did not believe such rumors. On the path to immortality, everyone fought to cross it. Although the ancient saints had the magnificent feat of sealing the heavens with the blood of the human emperor, in the end, the human emperor was remembered by the world because he had fought against the immortals alone and had a supreme cultivation. It was not because he was righteous. Strength was the only opportunity to become immortal. The Lord of Daotian Prefecture's great ambition was indeed awe-inspiring. However, if he was the reincarnation of an ancient saint, why didn't he go against the heavens and kill the immortals? Wouldn't that be more direct? At the very least, the Azure Continent should not be suppressed by a Lord of Daotian Prefecture for 100,000 years. The destiny of the human race should not be destroyed. Therefore, no matter what the Lord of Daotian Prefecture was scheming, in Ling Xiao's opinion, he was not as desireless as the world said. Among the opponents that Ling Xiao had faced in the past, Ancestor Yi was indeed very scheming. However, compared to the human race saint, he was slightly inferior. After all, Yi Luoyin had already fallen to the Supreme Being realm and lost the foundation of a Supreme Being. On the other hand, the Lord of Daotian Prefecture was at least a heavenly sovereign. Moreover, he was a heavenly sovereign who stood at the top of the Azure Continent. Ling Xiao could not afford to be careless when competing with such a person. Young master, I heard that every time the Lord of Daotian Prefecture give a lecture, the Heavenly Saint Business Alliance will hold a 10,000 Geniuses banquet. Xinyuan Weiyang looked expectant, but Ling Xiao shook his head slightly. Although the Lord of Daotian Prefecture's lecture was a grand occasion in the Azure Continent. However, in Ling Xiao's opinion, those who were truly talented and blessed by the heavens might not even waste their time to join in the fun. After all, those who were destined to become immortals had to train themselves in killing. Moreover, they had awakened their golden fingers. Although the Lord of Daotian Prefecture was a heavenly sovereign and had a deep understanding of the Great Path, his Tao might not be suitable for everyone. Therefore, most of those who came to listen to the Lord of Daotian Prefecture's lecture were those whose cultivation was shackled, their Tao hearts were impure, or those who had ulterior motives. Of course, apart from Yang Yuan and Zhang Jiuji, Ling Xiao had profited from every single person who appeared in Daotian City. As for Hua Mingxi from the Heavenly Saint Business Alliance, Ling Xiao was looking forward to meeting her. I heard that Hua Mingxi from the Hua family is the host of the 10,000 Geniuses banquet this time. Jin Han turned to look at Ling Xiao with a bright smile. I am quite familiar with her. If you need, I can introduce her to you. Oh, Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows and sipped the wine in his cup. How much do you know about the Heavenly Saint Business Alliance? The Heavenly Saint Business Alliance? As far as I know, the Heavenly Saint Business Alliance is an alliance of 3 clans. They are jointly in charge. After hundreds of thousands of years, the Heavenly Saint Business Alliance controls almost all the auction houses in the Qing subcontinent. They are extremely wealthy, but Jin Han wanted to say something but stopped. When she saw the coldness in Ling Xiao's eyes, she gritted her teeth and said softly, "But now, the Heavenly Saint Business Alliance is not very stable internally." Of course, she had heard all this from Hua Mingxi. If it had been in the past, Jin Han would not have betrayed the young master of the Hua family. However, the Golden Crow Holy Dynasty had already submitted to her master. All she could do was to help her master reach the peak of the Qing subcontinent. Nothing else mattered. Oh, go on. Ling Xiao smiled. Hua Mingxi was going to be an important part of his next plan. No matter how confident Ling Xiao was, as long as someone or force was targeted by him, they would not be able to escape. However, confidence was one thing. If he wanted to be flawless, he had to be cautious. The Heavenly Saint Business Alliance is ranked second among the 3 clans. The one ranked above the Hua family is the Lu family. The one ranked last is the Su family. However, in the past 1,000 years, the Su family has declined. The people of the main branch either died accidentally or had no talent. I'm afraid it won't be long before this clan completely loses the foundation of the business alliance. I once heard Mingxi say that not only the Su family, but even the Hua family also suspected that the Lu family was behind all of this. Their goal was to forcefully swallow the Su family and monopolize them so that they could completely control the merchant alliance. However, there was no evidence. All these years, she was also on tenterhooks and anxious. Jean Han smiled bitterly. This was a secret conversation between her and Hua Mingxi. Now that she said it to Ling Xiao, she felt a little complicated and ashamed. However, with her master's character, after knowing about Mingxi's predicament, he might help her to get through it. After all, her master was a gentle and righteous person. Chapter 1151. Oh, I see. Seems like this Miss Hua is a pitiful person. Ling Xiao nodded slightly, but there was already a look of contemplation in his eyes. Based on what Jean Han said, it was still uncertain whether the Lu family had secretly plotted against the Su family. But the Su family's decline was an indisputable fact. Moreover, the three clans had their own plans now. It was the best time to destroy them all. The Su family? Isn't this a coincidence? Could it be that everyone who knows how to do business in the 9 heavens and 10 lands has the surname Su? Ling Xiao suddenly smiled, which made Jean Han heave a sigh of relief. Back then, when the Golden Crow dynasty was facing destruction, it was young Master who descended from the heavens and led the Golden Crows out of their predicament. He also became a 3rd-grade heavenly venerable and suppressed the 3 dynasties. What's wrong with being young Master's servant? Maybe this time, the Hua family will have the opportunity to become the leader of the 3 clans? Young Master, Sister Hua is not only beautiful, but she's also proficient in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. She is a famous talent in the Azure world. Jean Han wanted to bring the 2 of them together, but she didn't want to share young Master's love with others. It was just that Gu Chao Ci was too overbearing and Xian Yuan Weiyang was too timid. If Hua Mingxi could enter young Master's eyes, she might be a good ally. By then, the 2 of them would serve young Master together. Why worry about not being favored? Beautiful? Am I such a superficial person in your eyes? Ling Xiao frowned, which made Jean Han's body tremble. She almost collapsed. Young Master, that's not what I meant. Remember, your duty is to look after the Golden Crow dynasty and the sealed item for me. Ling Xiao said indifferently, his expression indifferent. Jean Han had already put away her distracting thoughts. She didn't dare to have any more delusions. Now it seemed that the young Master of the Hua family was more useful than expected. However, how to arrange Su Yin and the Su family was something Ling Xiao had to think about. As for whether the Su family would rely on this person who wasn't related by blood, it wasn't something they could decide. The situation was more important than the favor. At the same time, in Dao Heaven City, this ancient city with its back to the Dao Tian Academy was the most famous city in the northwest of Qingcang. In fact, in the eyes of the people of the world, this city was the holy land of the human race. It was called the Holy City. Thus, even on normal days, the ancient city was always bustling with activity. Now that the Dao Heaven Manor Lord was about to give a lecture, the disciples of all the ancient clans and sects in the Azure continent had come to listen to his lecture. As far as the eye could see, there was a continuous stream of people in the city, shoulder to shoulder. All kinds of practitioners were either in groups of 3 or 5 or walking alone. Have you heard? During the competition of the 4 academies in the Dao Tian Academy, a young disciple by the name of Lu Ming shocked the world with a single brilliant feat. He defeated a group of geniuses who were at the 6th or 7th level of the Venerable Realm. Hey, didn't you hear? The real geniuses of the 4 academies didn't participate in the competition at all. Senior brother Dao Wuya from the Dao College has been cultivating in seclusion. If senior brother Dao Wuya took action, Lu Ming wouldn't have the chance to show off. That's true. Now that the Dao Heaven Manor Lord is about to give a lecture, the real geniuses of the 4 academies have all spent their energy on the few trials that are about to begin. Only someone like Lu Ming, who is greedy for fame, would show off. I heard that the final battle of the 4 academies will be held on the eve of the Dao Heaven Manor Lord's lecture. By then, I'd like to see how powerful Lu Ming is. There is a lot of discussion in Dao Heaven City. On the old street, an ordinary-looking young man dressed in linen blended in with the crowd, carefully listening to the movements in Dao Heaven City. Zhang Jiuji had already changed his appearance. There was a violent aura exuding from his body, giving people a terrifying sense of oppression. Of course, if it were in the past, this kind of aura might attract some attention. However, there were many geniuses gathered in Dao Heaven City, and even some descendants of hidden sects had appeared. As for someone dressed in plain clothes like Zhang Jiuji, no matter how strong his aura was, it would be difficult for him to attract too much attention. I wonder where 5th Senior Sister is now. Forget it. I'll go to the Heavenly Sacred Business Alliance to look for 2nd Senior Sister. Given her background, it'll naturally be easier to find 5th Senior Sister. Zhang Jiuji looked bitterly at the crowd in front of him. This was the first time he had seen so many cultivators in his life. There was a crowd of people, and there was no lack of people with powerful auras. It was no different from a fool's dream to find Lei Yun among so many cultivators. Furthermore, the 2 of them had just been intercepted. He was afraid that 5th Senior Sister must have disguised herself and blended in with the crowd like him. With that thought in mind, Zhang Jiuji no longer hesitated and strode toward the center of Dao Heaven City. The 10,000 Talents Banquet was also a grand event. A group of talented geniuses with powerful backgrounds gathered together. What did they want to do the most? Of course, it was to show off. They wanted to see who could show off more naturally. Therefore, every time the Banquet of Heaven's Favorites is held, it is a huge scene of face-slapping. Some people became famous because of it and gained the favor of many geniuses, while others were destined to become a laughingstock and run away. Regardless, before the Daotian Academy officially opened, the 10,000 Talents Banquet was still the most anticipated event in everyone's hearts. Look, what's that? Just then, a commotion broke out in the crowd. Immediately after, waves of cheers resounded through the clouds. It was extremely shocking. Zhang Jiuji frowned slightly and looked into the distance. There, he saw a flowery sedan being carried by 4 people. It was flying over from the sky. Celestial mist swirled around it, and it was as graceful as a swan. From afar, it looked like a celestial flower had descended to the mortal world. There was a faint fragrance that filled the air, causing one's heart to feel relaxed and happy. At this moment, although the flower sedan was covered with a veil, it could not block everyone's sight. One of them was a woman in a white dress who sat cross-legged quietly. Her fine black hair flowed down like a waterfall. Her face was like jade, her skin was like cream, and her eyebrows were like leaves. The thin corners of her mouth were curled up into a faintly discernible arc, giving others an extremely warm and amiable feeling. It's the Flower Fairy's flower sedan. The Flower Fairy is here. Flower Fairy, I love you. I'm your bootlicker. The entire Daotian city instantly fell into an uproar. Zhang Jiuji's eyes also flashed with a hint of surprise. Clearly, he did not expect this 2nd Senior Sister's appearance to be so otherworldly. It was only when the flower sedan descended from the sky and landed in front of a magnificent ancient palace in the city that Hua Mingxi stepped out of the sedan and waved at the countless geniuses rushing over. Under the sunlight, that jade-like hand was slender and fair, and it immediately caused some of the eccentric disciples to tremble. 2. Zhang Jiuji squeezed through the crowd and was about to walk towards Hua Mingxi when countless palms suddenly landed on his shoulder. Before he could react, he was thrown out. Where did this idiot come from? Don't you know that you have to line up to see the Flower Fairy? How rude. Miss Hua, love you, love you. Plop. Zhang Jiuji's figure landed on the ground with a blank expression. However, when he saw that Hua Mingxi was about to enter the palace, his eyes narrowed. His entire body suddenly turned into a flash of light and rushed towards her. Chapter 1152. Buzz. An ear-piercing, buzzing sound resounded through the sky. All the disciples of the immortal sect looked at the figure that was flying through the air in astonishment. Their eyes flashed with shock. Where did this idiot come from? Didn't he know that there was an unwritten rule around the young master of the Hua family? Boom! Just as Zhang Juji was about to land on the ground, the eyes of the four servants carrying the carriage shone with divine light. Four palm prints flew across the sky and pressed down on Zhang Juji. There was a loud boom. Even though Zhang Juji had a divine body, fear flashed across his face. Then, there seemed to be lightning blooming around him, and divine radiance ignited. Then, as everyone expected, his figure fell from the sky and smashed into the square. Pucci, blood mist rose. Zhang Juji felt as if all his bones were about to shatter. If his physical body had not been tempered by the dark tribulation divine thunder, the four palm prince would have killed him on the spot. Of course, even though the situation was critical, Zhang Juji did not dare to use the power of the Yin Moon. This was Dao Heaven City, the city under the saints. If he had a trace of the demonic aura on him, he would be killed on the spot without any explanation. After all, not everyone was as righteous as Lord Ling Xiao. Looking at the young man who stood up shakily from the ground, Huang Mingxi frowned slightly and let out a cry of surprise. She glared at the four servants angrily. "Did you forget what I said? You're not allowed to fight in Dao Heaven City." "Yes, young master." The four servants looked calm and bowed slightly. Huang Mingxi took out a white jade bottle from her universe ring and handed it to the servant beside her. "Go, give this to this young master. Miss Hua is too kind." The crowd burst into an uproar. Zhang Juji's actions just now were no different from seeking death. How dare he blaspheme the goddess? Even 1,000 cuts would not be enough. But not only was Miss Hua not angry, she even scolded the servants and gave them pills. What was there to say? Brag. "Miss Hua, you are too kind." If it was said that the crowd had only looked at Zhang Juji with ridicule and mockery in their eyes earlier, then, at this moment, he was truly filled with hatred. Why? He was just a young man in linen clothes. It was obvious that he had no background and came from a humble background. How could he be favored by the young miss? Just because he was ugly? He was the only one who was outrageous. However, at this moment, Huang Mingxi's eyes flashed with a strange light. Although her 4 palanquin slaves were only at the Exalt realm, when the 4 of them attacked together, an ordinary Azure Sky prodigy would have been crushed. However, the young man in front of him was only slightly injured. Furthermore, it was under the premise that he was caught off guard. When he was in danger just now, there seemed to be a flash of lightning energy on his body. It was common knowledge that Heaven's favorites who cultivated techniques such as lightning and fire had terrifying physical capabilities. The reason why Huang Mingxi was able to achieve her current status was because she was observant and treated people kindly. In other words, if this young man died now, she would definitely not waste this bottle of pills. Today, to be able to use a bottle of dawn to gain the favor of a mysterious Heaven's favorite, why not? Bah! If I had known earlier, I would have pounced on him too. That's right. Young Miss Hua is really kind-hearted. If it were up to me, those 4 servants must have been merciful. Otherwise, how could this young man block their combined attacks? What a lucky bastard. Around the plaza, everyone's words were vicious. They coldly watched as one of the palanquin slaves walked to Zhang Juji and handed the jade bottle in his hand to him with a cold expression. "Young miss has given you a gift. Why aren't you kneeling down and thanking her?" "Kneel down." Hearing this, Zhang Juji's face suddenly bloomed with a smile. Then, he did not even look at this person. Instead, he looked at Huang Mingxi in the distance. F*CK? What is this idiot doing? I don't think you're that smart. Is there a need to ask? Aren't you just pretending? Seeing this scene, the crowd was in an uproar again. There were even some who could not suppress the anger in their hearts. They rubbed their fists and were ready to teach this arrogant dog a lesson. Hearing the commotion behind her, Huang Mingxi, who was about to enter the ancient palace, suddenly stopped and turned around. She just happened to see Zhang Juji's deep and bright black eyes. For a moment, Hua Mingxi narrowed her eyes. She actually saw a hint of joy and frivolity in his eyes. You're quite ambitious. Is this your first time coming out to the world to train? However, it might not be a good thing in Heaven Dao City. Hua Mingxi smiled sweetly and shook her head slightly. She was about to leave. Over the years, she had seen all kinds of monstrous people. For someone like this linen-clothed young man, it was either his first time coming out to the world or he had great ambitions. However, no matter what, on the path to immortality, there were times when one had to pay a price for being arrogant. Second Sister Hua, I came all the way here. Are you going to ignore me like this? Hearing this, Zhang Jiuji smiled bitterly and reached out to touch his nose. In the next instant, a domineering look suddenly surged in his eyes. However, at this moment, the surrounding genius's expressions became more and more confused. Second Sister Hua, is this a new method to worm his way into being friends? I've never heard of Hua Mingxi having an elder brother or sister. Bootlicker. This young man is a bootlicker. However, just as everyone's expression was sullen and they were about to start a new round of ridicule and scolding, in front of the main hall, Hua Mingxi's pretty face suddenly froze. Then, her jade-like hand gently covered her red lips. She looked at the exceptionally tall young man in linen clothes with a face of disbelief. At this moment, there were still bloodstains at the corner of his mouth. However, the smile on his face was as bright as the morning sun. You are. Hua Mingxi took a step forward. Her body turned into a graceful swan, leaving a fragrance in the air. Her beautiful figure had already arrived beside Zhang Jiuji. You are. Sixth brother. All these years, although she had not returned to the Heaven and Earth Imperial Palace to visit her master, she had heard from the other senior sisters that her master had taken in a new junior brother. His life was miserable and he was very protective of him. Moreover, outsiders did not know that she had taken in a master at all. In addition, her master, Qing Mu, was indifferent and did not care about worldly affairs. Therefore, the five sisters had never done anything in the name of their master when they traveled the world. There was no one else in the world who could call her second sister other than her junior brother. It's me, second sister. Zhang Jiuji smiled playfully. A gentle look immediately appeared on Hua Mingxi's face. Come quickly. Let's talk inside. Okay. The two of them walked side by side into the ancient palace. At this moment, the entire square was already dead silent. Everyone looked at the young man who had his head held high and his chest puffed out like a little rooster. Then, they looked at the bright smile on Hua Mingxi's face and did not know what to say for a moment. Damn it. This time, he actually succeeded in pretending. But let's talk inside. How we going? Where do we going? Inexplicably, a strong sense of jealousy and hatred grew in the hearts of many geniuses. Chapter 1153. Junior Brother. It's really you. In the grand hall of the Heavenly Saint Business Alliance, Hua Mingxi looked Zhang Jiuji up and down with a smile. At this moment, the young man waved his hand and took off the mask on his face, revealing another, average-looking face. Hua Mingxi was confused. Generally speaking, those who showed up with a mask were either extremely beautiful and did not want to cause trouble. For example, the one from the immortal Phoenix ancient dynasty. Before she became the empress, she always covered her face with a white veil and never showed her true face. Even so, there were still countless geniuses from the ancient clans and disciples from the immortal sects who were attracted by her temperament and chased after her for 100 years. It was not until half a year ago, when the young master of the Ling clan appeared and killed a bunch of bootlickers and announced to the world that Gu Chaozi was his fiancée, that the craze for the empress, which had lasted for 200 years, gradually died down. The other was that they made a big mistake and hid with a mask to avoid the disaster. However, it was said that this junior brother had no relatives or friends and had been cultivating with his master. How could he have enemies? Yes, it was very strange. Junior brother Zhang Jiuji greets second senior sister. Zhang Jiuji bowed. Although his face was pale, his temperament was flawless. Junior brother, are you okay? Just now. Senior sister, don't worry. I'm fine. Second senior sister, have you seen fifth senior sister? Zhang Jiuji shook his head and looked serious. Fifth junior sister? No. Junior brother, did you come with junior sister Lei Yin? Hua Mingxi's eyes flashed with confusion. Looking at Zhang Jiuji's expression, it seemed that he had encountered some difficulties. Back then, she had found out about the existence of this junior brother from Lei Yin. After all, Lei Yin often went to visit her master as the demon clan's master who lived in seclusion in the far south demon region. However, Lei Yin was the young master of the Thunder Dragon clan and had never stepped into the territory of the human clan. The demon clan had always been united. She should have no enemies. What difficulties could she have encountered? No. Zhang Jiuji's face turned pale, and he felt uneasy. Junior brother, don't worry. Let's talk about it slowly. Don't worry. I still have some prestige in the Azure world. I won't let you be at a disadvantage. Hua Mingxi took out a bottle of elixir from her universe ring. Take this elixir first to ease your injuries. Thank you, second senior sister. Zhang Jiuji forcefully stabilized his mind before taking out a medicinal pill and placing it into his mouth. He felt a warm flow along his meridians and overflow, whereas the injuries on his body actually recovered at a terrifying speed. Furthermore, at this moment, Zhang Jiuji could feel that the realm he had just broken through was showing signs of breaking through again. This is a 7th grade spiritual pill. There are 2 more in the bottle. Take them with you. Hua Mingxi smiled. It seemed that in the eyes of ordinary people, these elixirs were nothing more than sugar beans and mud balls. Not worth mentioning. Many thanks, senior sister. Zhang Jiuji's eyes trembled. Only now did he realize that this second senior sister was as rich as the rumors said. All right, tell me, what kind of predicament did you and Lei Yun encounter? Senior sister, 5th senior sister, and I came all the way from the demon region. On the way, we were ambushed. 5th senior sister gave me a life-saving talisman to protect me. Zhang Jiuji clenched his teeth. If Lei Yun had not insisted that she could escape, how could he have left her alone? Now that 5th senior sister's whereabouts were unknown, one could imagine the guilt in his heart. Ambushed. Do you know which force it is? Hua Mingxi's pretty face froze. Even her aura seemed a little gloomy. However, Zhang Jiuji shook his head. I just came into this world, so I don't know much about the major forces in Qing Tsang. However, the woman who tried to kill us had a cold temperament and a mighty immortal aura. Although she also had the aura of an honorable realm, she was able to command 2 Saint Realm experts. Those 2 Saint Realm experts chased after me for a very long distance. 5th senior sister and that woman were engaged in a fierce battle. As he spoke, that fairy-like figure appeared in Zhang Jiuji's mind again. Even compared to second senior sister, that female immortal's temperament and the arrogance in her eyes made his heart tremble inexplicably. It was hard to imagine how unparalleled that face under the veil of immortal clouds was. Even sometimes, Zhang Jiuji had an inexplicable impulse. He really wanted to see that female immortal again. It had nothing to do with any grudges. He just wanted to personally unveil her mysterious veil. Cough, cough. Looking at Zhang Jiuji, who seemed to be in a trance, Hua Mingxi frowned slightly and coughed lightly. A young man who could be chosen by master naturally had a good temperament. However, what kind of woman could make junior brother reveal such an infatuated expression despite being his enemy? Did you see that woman's face clearly? No. At that time, she was covered by the veil of immortal clouds. I couldn't see her face clearly. However, according to my estimation, she should be a woman with a cold temperament and unparalleled beauty. Her eyes were the most brilliant galaxy I have ever seen. Umph. Hua Mingxi snorted coldly and glared at Zhang Jiuji. No, little junior brother, why are you licking my boots while chatting? Let's not talk about whether Lei Yun is in trouble or not. Since she dared to kill the 2 of you, she must have a motive. With your intelligence, It's fortunate that you ran away quickly. Otherwise, you would have most likely died this time. Senior sister. Do you think something will happen to fifth senior sister? Zhang Jiuji smiled awkwardly. He also felt emotional. If it was before, he had never seen a peerless woman in this world. But now, Lei Yun and Hua Mingxi were both unparalleled. However, they were different. They were completely different. It was a kind of otherworldly aura that was unique in the world. You and Lei Yun agreed to meet at Dao Heaven City? Hua Mingxi pondered. There was a rare trace of seriousness between her brows. Zhang Jiuji spoke for a long time. She only heard that the woman who tried to kill them was extremely beautiful and had a noble status. Everything else was useless. Not to mention Hua Mingxi, even a young master of World Lord Palace would find it hard to find out. Yes, fifth senior sister knew that you would come to Dao Heaven City. So, we agreed to meet here. However, I have been secretly investigating for the past few days. I didn't find out anything about her. Zhang Jiuji sighed. He looked even more anxious. Second senior sister, I have a bad feeling. Don't worry. Lei Yun is the young master of Lightning Dragon Tribe. She must have many life-saving methods. Moreover, if something really happened to her, with Lightning Lord's temper, the entire city should be in an uproar now. Hua Mingxi shook her head. Suddenly, she clapped her hands. Outside the main hall, the 4 sedan slaves immediately walked in. They bowed to Hua Mingxi. Young master, arrange some people to secretly search for my 5th junior sister Lei Yun in Dao Heaven City and the surrounding regions. Also, spread the news that I have arrived in Dao Heaven City. The louder the news, the better. After that, take my token and personally make a trip to the Lightning Dragon Tribe in the extreme south. Go and ask about the Lightning Lord Lei Yun. According to Hua Mingxi's thoughts, even if an honorable realm person had unparalleled battle strength, it was impossible for him to kill Lei Yun easily. At least, if she wanted to leave, no one should be able to stop her. Now that she had just arrived at Dao Heaven City, perhaps Lei Yun would appear soon. Face covered by immortal clouds. Temperament cold? A cold and arrogant immortal face flashed across Hua Mingxi's mind. It shouldn't be. This empress had always had no desires. How could she casually kill people? Chapter 1154. Yes, young master. Hua Mingxi heaved a sigh of relief after the 4 servants left. Junior brother, don't be too anxious. I just arrived at Dao Sky City today. Perhaps 5th junior sister will hear the news and come here soon. Thank you, 2nd senior sister. Zhang Jiuji nodded silently. All the prodigies of the Azure continent gathered at the 10,000 Talents banquet. I wonder if that fairy will show up. For 3 days in a row, Dao Heaven City was bustling with noise and excitement. Numerous ancient battleships, great demons, and great beasts descended from the sky. Countless geniuses with extraordinary temperaments and vast spiritual auras arrived, causing an uproar. Look, what's that? Heavenly steeds and battle armors descended from the sky in the distance. A group of riders holding black spears and riding black horses descended from the sky, escorting a golden carriage. At the front of the riders was a young man in silver armor and riding a white horse. He had an extraordinary aura and a cold face, but his aura was extremely powerful. He was riding a horse and wearing silver armor and a silver spear. He had black hair and a golden crown, but he gave off an aura that made it seem like an army of 10,000 was no match for him. He looked down on the world with indifference and detachment. The sound of Dao resounded across 30,000 miles, attracting everyone's attention. It's the blood-clad marquis of the Shunwu dynasty. Shinjingan. I didn't expect this god of slaughter to come as well. Is that Marquis Shui's fiancée? Princess Wu Hongqiu of the Shunwu dynasty? This aura is indeed worthy of the title of the young god of slaughter. The crowd was shocked. Many prodigies from the ancient dynasties and celestial dynasties had a hint of wariness in their eyes. It was hard to imagine that such an elegant and quiet young man would have such a ferocious title. The blood-clad marquis. The young Marquis was the youngest person in the history of the Shenwu dynasty to be conferred the title of Marquis. He had a powerful background and was said to be from a hidden ancient sect. What was even more frightening was that it was said that he had killed 800,000 people over the years. However, what really made Shun Jing'an's name resound across the Azure continent was that the divine martial crown prince had fallen into a trap when he went to train in the mortal world. He had mobilized the entire world to kill the future leader of the divine martial crown prince. At the critical moment, Shun Jing'an and his spear descended from the sky and killed everyone with his supremacy cultivation. Although the cultivators of the lower realms generally had low cultivation levels. But in that battle, there were a total of 60 honorable realm experts who died in Shun Jing'an's hands. The number of other Emperor God experts was uncountable. Furthermore, by the time the experts of the Shenwu dynasty heard the news and rushed over, Shun Jing'an's white robes had already been dyed red. That was how the name Marquis Bloodclad came about. He was the only one in the venerable realm who was bestowed the title of Marquis. The blood-red robe was still hanging in the divine martial emperor palace as a deterrent to traitors. And in order to reward the young Marquis for his courage and decisiveness, the divine martial emperor had even betrothed his eldest daughter. Even though the two of them hadn't held their wedding ceremony yet, in the eyes of outsiders, the two of them were already intertwined, advancing and retreating together, sharing glory and glory together. Of the 18 marquises of the divine martial marquises, he was the most glorious one. Look, why are there two suns in the sky? Am I seeing things? Just as Marquis blood-robed and the others landed, the crowd burst into an uproar again. Shun Jing'an frowned and turned to look at the sky. Sure enough, he saw two suns shining brightly in the sky. But one of them was a bright sun that was slightly red in color, while the other was a true golden color. The divine radiance was blinding. It was too terrifying. Just the wisps of light alone had the power to annihilate the sky and shatter mountains and seas. Then, everyone was dumbfounded as they watched the sacred sun fall from the sky, tearing a reddish-gold crack in the void. It was as if a huge star had fallen from the sky. Until the light suddenly stopped, and when the brilliance dissipated, a tall and imposing figure was revealed. It was a young man with a square face and wide eyes. He had an unquestionable majesty. His eyes were like two suns, shooting out thousands of rays of golden light. It was to the extent that even his hair was a dazzling golden color that contained an unparalleled divinity. The reddish-gold robe he wore was embroidered with mountains, rivers, sun, and moon, which made his figure seem even more sacred and tall. He had the majesty to control all light in the world and punish all darkness. It's the descendant of the Saint Emperor Palace's young emperor, Marquis Xiaoyang. It's Marquis Xiaoyang. I didn't expect him to be born too. The Saint Emperor Palace might not be as famous as the Shenwu dynasty in the eyes of the world, but because the experts of the palace had not been born for a long time, many people thought that they had already declined. It was rumored that this force was first established by the 5 great emperors, and it could be traced back to the human sovereign era. It was undeniable that some of the 5 great emperors might have fallen the hundreds of thousands of years of inheritance. But as long as one of the 5 was still alive, the Saint Emperor Palace would be the true immortal inheritance of the Qing Song. The descendants of the 5 great emperors had awakened their talents and inherited the name of the great emperors. Lord Xiaoyang was the descendant of the Sun Emperor, and he was extremely talented. The Holy Sun body was the best in the world, and the ancestral awakening bloodline was the true bloodline of the great emperors. Now that the world was in chaos, all kinds of monstrous talents were born. Lord Xiaoyang was the most famous monstrous talent in the Saint Emperor Palace, and Wei Wuye could not be compared to him. Lord Xiaoyang. Shun Jing'an turned his head and looked at the burly figure. This person had the true blood of the great emperors flowing in his body, and it already had divinity. Although Shun Jing'an's combat strength was terrifying and he killed ruthlessly, he was still slightly inferior to Lord Xiaoyang in terms of talent. However, talent was one thing. A true powerhouse grew through slaughter. The so-called holy body and divine body were just natural creations, and they were not powerful in Shun Jing'an's eyes. I guess this must be the Princess Royal of the Xinwu Empire, Wu Hongqiu. Lord Xiaoyang did not even look at Shun Jing'an, and a smile suddenly bloomed on his face. He waved his hand, and a red divine light suddenly appeared out of nowhere. It turned into a gust of wind and swept toward Wu Hongqiu's sedan. I heard that the Princess Royal is an outstanding beauty. Why don't you let me see if this so-called outstanding beauty is just an undeserved reputation, or if she really has some charm? The Xinwu Empire was also the inheritance of a great emperor, and he was known as the Great Emperor. He was good at killing and had once suppressed an era. The 5 great emperors of the Saint Emperor Palace were said to have some connections with the ancestor of the Xinwu Empire, and this caused the younger generation to often compete with each other. Lord Xiaoyang was deliberately making things difficult for Wu Hongqiu to intimidate the Xinwu Empire. You don't know what's good for you. Shun Jing'an snorted coldly, and his figure rose into the air, and then his spear shot out like a dragon. A ray of cold light suddenly appeared, and an extremely cold aura suddenly swept out in all directions, destroying the universe, and colliding with a golden gust of wind. Buzz! Suddenly, a terrifying roar resounded through the sky, and everyone saw that the space where the 2 attacks collided instantly shattered. A wisp of power spread out, and it was enough to kill an ordinary honorable. Chapter 1155. Boom! Spiritual power scattered in all directions, and the aura of the great Tao collided and destroyed everything. Just a casual collision was enough to kill countless supremacy prodigies in Tao Sky City. This was the Azure Sky Monster, the true top prodigy of the current generation. At this moment, everyone was looking at the 2 figures standing opposite each other in the air. Their eyes flickered with intense fear. Everyone had the opportunity to listen to the Tao Sky City Lord's lecture. However, there were tens of thousands of prodigies in Tao Sky City. How could a lecture hall accommodate all of them? Therefore, the qualification to enter the hall had to be fought for with one's strength and talent. After all, the closer one was to a sage's Tao discussion, the easier it was to feel the Tao rhyme true intent, and the easier it was to achieve enlightenment. Now, it seemed that both Xiaoyang Lord and Marquis Bloodclad had the chance to be in the top 10. Compared to the 2 of them, most of the prodigies present were like ants that were not worth mentioning. As expected of Marquis Bloodclad, you can actually resist my sun god power with your mortal body. Xiaoyang Lord's face was slightly gloomy. He was the descendant of a great emperor and was born with a sacred body and divine blood. He had never taken these prodigies seriously. His immortal path was the end of the universe. Even the 10 great sequences of the Azure Firmament were nothing but empty titles in his eyes. However, he had to admit that Shun Jing'an was very strong. The Tao rhyme contained in the spear was enough to break his defense and threaten his life. Interesting. He had not come to Tao Sky City to listen to the Tao Sky City Lord's lecture. What was the use of an old man who had not even become a great emperor, even if he had read the human race's scriptures and comprehended many Tao rhymes? He was still a heavenly sovereign, a mortal that a great emperor could easily kill. He had come here for the Myriad Talents banquet. Every time there was a banquet, the Sky Saint Business Alliance would take out a treasure for everyone to fight for. This time, he was determined to win. Resist. Shun Jing'an's cold face had a sinister smile that did not match his temperament. Tao rhymes seemed to flow around him, and countless blood runes began to coil around the silver spear. They were like living creatures, exuding a terrifying sharpness. Everyone could vaguely feel that the current Shun Jing'an was the true divine martial god of slaughter. Even immortals and demons could not stop him. Then, why don't you try taking a shot for me? Shun Jing'an suddenly raised his head, the corner of his mouth smiling sinisterly. His pair of eagle eyes had already turned blood red. However, the more it was like this, the more it gave people an inexplicable sense of intimidation. Among the crowd, there was already a girl with her hands clasped together. If it wasn't for the presence of the divine martial grand princess, she would have already lost control of her greed. Between heaven and earth, the sound of spears suddenly rang out. The silver spear in Shun Jing'an's hand suddenly transformed into a blood dragon. It was at least 1,000 feet long and seemed to be connected to his arm. At this moment, the entire Dao Heaven City seemed to be shrouded in dark clouds. Only the silver-armored, blood spear figure with his hair tied up with a golden crown remained, looking down on everything. But one day, with a gun in hand, I'll kill all the pretentious dogs in the world. Oomph. Do you think this monarch will be afraid of a human ant like you? The young Sun Lord sneered as sunlight rose from his body, his entire being turned into a sun, releasing a dazzling divine light. Although he didn't know if those great emperor ancestors were still alive, but the elders in the small palace had told him that he wasn't a human. He was a descendant of the sun. He was the descendant of God, with the world's most ancient and sacred bloodline flowing in his veins. His Tao was invincible. Humans, demons, ghosts, and barbarians should all submit to him. A terrifying heat wave surged out like a tidal wave. The sharpness that had originally permeated the heavens and earth had silently diminished. Shen Jing'an frowned slightly, although he didn't have the slightest bit of carelessness in his heart. But it seemed that he had underestimated this descendant of the Sunlight Emperor. Arrogant. However, just as Shen Jing'an took a step forward, the blood spear in his hand pierced through the void and was about to kill the young Sun Lord. A cold and gentle voice suddenly came from the golden carriage in the distance. Marquis. Shen Jing'an stopped in his tracks and turned to look at the carriage. He saw a fair and slender hand suddenly lift the curtain of the carriage and reach out. Cough, cough. Immediately after, a coughing sound was heard. Shen Jing'an immediately retracted his spear and walked to the front of the carriage. He raised his hand and held that fair and slender hand. Eldest princess, I've long heard that the young Sun Lord is extremely talented and has a terrifying bloodline. Cough, cough, cough. Today, I've finally met you. You really live up to your reputation. The curtain of the carriage was lifted, and a woman in a golden robe slowly walked out and appeared in front of everyone. She was a beautiful woman with a pale face and a delicate body. She didn't wear any makeup and had a delicate temperament. Her skin was delicate, and her hair was tied up in a bun with a phoenix hairpin. She had a dignified aura. The divine martial eldest princess, Wu Hongqiu. It was rumored that this eldest princess had a tragic life. Her mother was originally the divine martial emperor's descendant, but she died in an accident when giving birth to her. Later on, the divine martial emperor established a new one. Although Wu Hongqiu had the title of eldest princess, she didn't have much honor, until she was bestowed a marriage and became the fiancée of the blood-robed marquis, Shen Jing'an, which made her famous in the imperial city. Shen Jing'an had once entered the palace for her and forcefully suppressed the imperial concubines and princes, which infuriated the imperial court. However, this matter was left unsettled in the end, and the name Shen Jing'an had become a taboo in the divine martial emperor dynasty. Oh, eldest princess, you flatter me. TSK, TSK. What a pity. Such a beauty is actually a sickly person. The young Sun Lord smiled coldly. Instantly, killing intent surged in Shen Jing'an's eyes. However, Wu Hongqiu grabbed his hand, and he couldn't move. Young Sun Lord, you better restrain yourself. This is Dao Heaven City. I'm just a marquis of the divine martial emperor dynasty. Perhaps I don't dare to offend the divine martial emperor palace, but some people might not give you face. Shen Jing'an snorted. He naturally knew Wu Hongqiu's concerns. Now that the blood-robed marquis was in the limelight, there were already forces in the imperial court that were ready to take action. It wasn't a wise move to offend the young Sun Lord now. Not giving me face. Let me ask you, who in the entire Qing Song dares to not give me face? The young Sun Lord laughed maniacally as he looked around the crowd. Instantly, many prodigies' expressions changed, and they turned their heads to look elsewhere. It was obvious that after witnessing the divine martial Emperor Palace's prodigy's strength, everyone was already fearful of him. Seeing this, the young Sun Lord's smile widened. On the other hand, Shun Jing'an held his silver spear tightly as his face darkened. Chirp! At that moment, a loud phoenix cry suddenly came from the sky. Immediately after, a pair of green phoenix wings descended from the sky, covering the clouds and the sun. Vast demonic aura gathered in the clouds, causing countless demonic beasts in the city to kneel on the ground and tremble. And on that green phoenix, a tall and slender figure stood with her hands behind her back. Her beauty was peerless, and her temperament was unparalleled. The indifference in her beautiful eyes was like the deepest abyss in the Nine Heavens Palace. Gu Chao Ci, you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.